Good morning. I would like to call the Monday, February 17th Board of Zoning Adjustments meeting to order. We will begin with roll call. Candace Forrest,
Present.
Todd James,
Present.
Tamara Agons is absent, Jose Alvarez,
Present.
Ramiro Diaz, Alfonso Gonzalez,
Present.
and Jason Richards.
Present.
At this time, would the board make a motion to adopt the minutes from the January 27th meeting?
Musso.
It's been moved by Commissioner Alvarez to adopt our minutes. Moved by Commissioner Alvarez, second by Commissioner James to adopt the minutes from our last meeting. Second. Roll call vote. Todd James,
Yes.
Jose Alvarez, Ramiro Diaz,
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez, Jason Richards,
Yes.
and Candace Forrest, yes. 6 yeas, no nays, the motion carries.
Please note that the board will recess at approximately 1 p.m. if the meeting has not already been adjourned, and will reconvene at approximately 1:30 p.m. As a reminder to applicants, action that the board takes today will be released in the form of a disposition notice by February 27th and sent via email and mail to the applicant, as well as posted on the One Stop app for other interested parties. Requests that the board votes to approve must show compliance with any noted provisos before the case is finalized and granted final approval. One item on today's agenda has been deemed improper. Item number 3, BZA 005-25 for the property at 2310 Perdido Street. In addition, one item on today's agenda has been withdrawn. Item number 12, BZA 013-25 for the property at 8228, 8230 Nelson Street. The first item on the agenda is for an executive session to discuss the following pending litigation. Maureen Greer et al. Versus the City of New Orleans through its Board of Zoning Adjustments, docket number 2023-13438, Division B, Civil District Court, Parish of Orleans, deferred from January 27th, 2025 hearing, and Maureen Greer et al. Versus the City of New Orleans through its Board of Zoning Adjustments, docket number 2025-00295, Division J, Civil District Court, Parish of Orleans. However, as this is associated with a BZA appeal 062-24, which was deferred at the last hearing to the March hearing, staff requests a 30-day deferral to the March hearing. Would the board consider a motion to defer this item for 30 days?
So moved.
It's been moved by Commissioner Richards, second by Commissioner James. Roll call vote. Todd James,
Yes.
Jose Alvarez, Ramiro Diaz,
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez, Jason Richards,
Yes.
and Candace Forrest, yes. 6 yeas, no nays, the motion carries.
We will now begin with unfinished business for variances. Will the chair please read the hearing rules for variances?
Yes, rules and procedures for public hearings, variance requests. The following procedures shall be observed during the hearing. Each speaker shall give their name and address prior to speaking on the proposal. The applicant or representative will speak first. The presentation shall be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes for each applicant or representative speaker. But in no event shall the cumulative presentation total by applicants or their representatives exceed 10 minutes. Proponents or persons in favor of the proposal will speak next and be allowed 2 minutes per speaker. Opponents or persons in opposition of the proposal will speak next and be allowed 2 minutes per speaker. The applicant or representative will be allowed a rebuttal. The rebuttal shall be limited to a cumulative maximum of 3 minutes. For an exceptional case, the time limitations may be extended by the presiding officer with the approval of the board. As the board deems necessary, the case may be acted upon at this meeting or deferred for additional information or review. If the case is deferred, it will be acted on at a subsequent meeting as provided by law. All proper parliamentary procedures shall be followed, including recognition of speakers, relevance of argument, and absolute prohibition of applause or demonstration. Standard of review. The Board of Zoning Adjustments shall not authorize a variance from requirements of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance unless it finds, based upon the evidence presented to it, that each case has satisfied the 9 criteria listed in Article 4, Section 4.6.f of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance.
Item 1, docket number BZA 001-25.
BZA docket 00125 is for a property located at 2512 Constant Street. This request is to permit the creation of lots with insufficient lot area, insufficient lot width, insufficient lot depth, insufficient permeable open space, insufficient interior side yard setback, and insufficient rear yard setback. This request was deferred at the January hearing at staff's request to finalize the report. Staff believes the requested variances for proposed Lot 12A and the requested variances for proposed Lot 12B meet 9 of the 9 criteria of the standards for variances of Article 4, Section 4.6F of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. Therefore, the staff recommends approval of the requested variances subject to one proviso.
Is the applicant present for BZA docket 001-25? Make sure that that mic is on.
There we go. Is that better?
Yes. And give your name and address for the record.
My name is David Sullivan. I live at 2500 Constant Street.
You could go ahead with your comments.
Okay. I bought the property in 1995. It has 2500 and 2512 are part of the same property. They're two separate houses. And we live in 2500, and we are wanting to split the property so that the 2500 and 2512 become separate properties. This, as you can see on the Sanborn map, this has been, these two buildings have been part of the same property, and we are just seeking to not change anything, but to separate them and bring them in line with every property having one separate family dwelling.
That's the end of your comments? Okay.
No.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in support of the applicant for BZA docket 001-25? Anyone here in opposition? Any questions from the board?
Just a question to the applicant. You've had a chance to review the report. You're okay with the proviso as noted? Yeah. Okay.
Or yes.
Thanks. No problem. Madam Chair, for motions in order.
Yes, proceed.
Madam Chair, in regards to BZA docket number 001-25, my motion is to accept the staff's recommendation for the requested waivers for the proposed Lot 12A and the proposed waivers for proposed Lot 12B, and move for approval with the one noted proviso, understand that the 9 criteria have been met.
Second.
Thank you. With regards to BZA docket 001-25, it's been moved by Commissioner James, second by Commissioner Gonzalez to grant the requested waivers, finding that the 9 criteria have been met, subject to one proviso. Roll call vote. Todd James.
Yes.
Jose Alvarez.
Yes.
Ramiro Diaz.
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez.
Yay.
Jason Richards.
Yes.
Candace Forrest. Yes. 6 yeas, no nays. The motion carries. Next item.
Thank you.
Item 2, docket number BZA 004-25.
Good morning. BZA 425 is a request to permit a standard restaurant with insufficient open space ratio. This is a reapplication of BZA 623, which was approved subject to 5 provisos. The approval expired, which prompted the applicant to reapply for this variance. So this is a historic structure, and the applicant intends to renovate it into a standard restaurant. When they began renovations, it was brought to light that the accessory structure at the rear of the site needed to be demolished. The demolition of the structure resulted in the loss of the non-conforming open space ratio at the site. So as such, the applicant needs this waiver because the open space ratio would be 0 feet, which is below the required 30% and triggers the need for a variance of 0.30. Therefore, staff recommends approval subject to 2 standard provisos. There's a misprint in the report that says 5, but it's actually 2.
Thank you. Is the applicant present?
Good morning, Board. Missy Quigley, Sherman Strategies, 800 Barone Street, New Orleans, Louisiana, 70113. We also have the architecture team if you have any questions for them. I want to thank Valerie for her report. We had to reapply because there was delays. This group had other restaurants going on, COVID, et cetera. The first floor will be filled in, but the rest of it will be open to the sky. I noted the second proviso, the holding bar is contingent on getting this variance. So if we get this variance, the holding bar will fit within the 15%. This is going to be the Dead Rabbit, and we're really excited to bring it to New Orleans. They have locations all over, and I just visited the one in Austin. It was really nice. If you have any questions, please let me know, and thank you for your support.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in support of the applicant for BZA docket 004-25? Anyone here in opposition? Any questions from the board? Seeing none, is there a motion?
For motions in order.
Yes, proceed.
Madam Chair, in regards to BZA docket number 004-25, my motion is to accept the staff's recommendation for the requested waiver of Article 10, Section 10.3.A, Table 11-2 for open space ratio, and move for approval, understanding that the 9 criteria have been met with the 2 noted provisos.
Second.
Thank you. With regards to BZA docket 004-25, it's been moved by Commissioner James, second by Commissioner Gonzalez to grant the requested waiver, finding that the 9 criteria have been met and subject to 2 provisos. Roll call vote, Todd James.
Hold on a second.
Hold on 1 second. I just want to clarify the table number.
What's 10-2 in the report, correct?
It's been moved by Commissioner James, second by Commissioner Gonzalez to grant the requested waiver, finding that the 9 criteria have been met and subject to 2 provisos. Roll call vote, Todd James.
Yes.
Jose Alvarez. Yes. Ramiro Diaz.
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez.
Yay.
Jason Richards.
Yes.
And Candace Forrest. Yes. 6 yeas, no nays. The motion carries. Next item.
Thank you.
Item number 3, BZA 005-25, for the property at 2310 Perdido Street was deemed improper.
And a quick follow-up to that, that item was deemed improper. However, it came to light that there was a text amendment to the zoning ordinance that makes that item actually proper. So we have redocketed that item. It will be on the agenda for the next meeting as BZA 1825.
Item 4, docket number BZA 006-25.
BZA 625 is a request to permit the construction of an office space with insufficient minimum ceiling heights and non-compliant primary building entrance orientation. So the proposal includes an expansion of the existing St. Paul Catholic Church to include an office building. The proposed primary entrance will face the Wilson Avenue side of the site instead of the required Chef Mentor Highway side. The proposed ceiling height of the office building is 9 feet, which is below the required 12 feet, and requires a waiver of 3 feet. While the proposed structure will serve the church and neighboring community, staff recommends denial as there are no special conditions that are peculiar to the land or structure. Literal interpretation of the ordinance would not deprive the applicants of rights commonly enjoyed. The variance will confer on the applicant special privilege. The variance will alter the essential character of the locality. Strict adherence would not result in a demonstrable hardship. and the request is primarily for the convenience or profit of the property owner. Therefore, staff recommends denial of this request.
Is the applicant present for BZA docket 006-25? You could come up, please.
Hi, my name is Lee Green. I am with the architecture firm, and I'm supporting St. Paul's Catholic Church. And I am located at 105 La Rue France in Lafayette, Louisiana. I am coming to defend the primary entrance being located towards the church because this church serves an elderly population. And there's an ADA ramp that will be facing the church in the parking lot as opposed to the street, where there won't be any parking on the street. And that's where the parishioners will be coming from the church or from the parking lot to the building. So the primary entrance, we feel, benefits the elderly parishioners at the church and all the parishioners at the church being located in the designs that we have provided. Secondly, the height of the ceiling. Even though our ceilings are placed between, in some rooms it's 10 feet, in some rooms it's 9 feet. The exterior of the building does rise from 11 foot 9 inches to 15 feet on the outside, providing height, if that is the concern. We had not been explained why there was a 12-foot requirement inside of the building, but we did want to offer that up as, we are meeting the exterior looks in that area for that. Those are all my comments.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in support of the applicant for BZA docket 006-25?
Jacqueline Mayo, 5803 Winchester Park Drive. I am a parishioner and an elder parishioner of the parish, and I am in agreement with what Ms. Lee said in reference to the position of the door being inside the yard for the safety and concern of our elders. And as for the structure, I am in agreement with Ms. Lee. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here in support of the applicant? Anyone here in opposition? Any questions from the board?
Question of staff. With regards to the building, its orientation and scale, if this was all on one lot of record and the administration building would have been considered an accessory building to the church, would the same waivers and requirements still apply?
I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to look that up unless, Emily, you have that information. I'm assuming it would still be.
I'm not sure if the building would be considered accessory at that point. It would be accessory to the main use as a use, but as the building, I think it would still
Wouldn't be an
be.
accessory building,
Yeah.
but an accessory use to the worship, to the place of worship.
Yes.
And that's why I'm asking that question, because I think that changes how this property would be looked at in some capacity, also understanding there's the existing building that's there as well. There's a certain scale, and I believe that's what the architect was referring to a minute ago, that building basically has a certain floor height within it, certain scale of how it appears on the exterior, so they're designing to match what's the context of that parish in the buildings within that parish property. The second piece to this is just knowing that from an administrative function of how the building would function, this wouldn't be necessarily sold as a separate building down the road. This still would be sold with the rest of the church property. So if anything, it still performs as one campus as opposed to individual buildings, which I think is what was always the intent of how this was drafted in the CZO and how to push for front entrances to face the primary right-of-way as well as the first floor scale. So to answer your question about the 12-foot component, that was from the perception of how retail frontage would work and how you visually would see the space. So it at least had some ceiling height within the first floor. But because this isn't a principal use and one primary use up front, this is a little bit different in terms of what you guys are proposing.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out too that the immediate context around it is some residential, even though the
Right.
zoning is commercial. And so you
Right.
do have a unique circumstance where you've got this commercial district and there are some buildings nearby that don't get anywhere close to this 12-foot requirement.
Correct. And I think even when you look at primary scale, by the time it's elevated to the BFE, and then the ceiling height within it, it's not really giving any latitude to the fact that the scale of the building itself does still read the context and would, in theory, be at the 12-foot level by the time you add BFE height plus ceiling height.
Any other questions from the board?
For motions in order.
Yes, proceed.
Madam Chair, with regards to BZA docket number 006-25, my motion would be for approval of the requested waivers. For Article 15, Section 15.3, Point B, Point 1, Point A for building design standards, building entrance. And Article 15, Section 15.3, Point B, Point 1, Point F for building design standards, minimum ceiling height. While I know the staff report acknowledges
I think 1.
6 of the criteria not met, I want to be able to use what was provided in the applicant's letter as well as the comments provided here to fulfill the 9 criteria and move for the approval. I'm assuming it would be the 3 standard provisos.
One standard proviso.
One standard?
Yeah, I was going to say they had 1.
One. Sorry, you did
listed.
have that in there.
Clarify, it is the requirement for the design overlay to be addressed as well.
Okay. So just amend my motion to acknowledge that part as provided by staff.
Second.
Thank you. With regards to BZA docket 006-25, it's been moved by Commissioner James, second by Commissioner Richards, to grant the requested waivers, finding that the 9 criteria have been met, adopting the submission of the applicant as well as the commentary for today to satisfy that the 9 criteria have been met and subject to 1 noted proviso. Roll call vote. Todd James,
Yes.
Jose Alvarez, Ramiro Diaz,
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez,
Yay.
Jason Richards,
Yes.
and Candace Forrest. Yes. 6 yeas, no nays. The motion carries. Next item.
Item 5, docket number BZA 007-25.
I'm presenting this docket on behalf of Robin. BZA 725 is a request for variances from the provisions of Article 13, Section 13.3.8.1 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance to permit the creation of lots with insufficient lot area and insufficient lot depth. The petition site is an undeveloped corner lot in the Aurora Gardens neighborhood in Algiers that features approximately 234 feet of frontage along General Meyer, 53 feet of frontage along Aurora Drive, and a lot area of approximately 27,480 square feet. The applicant intends to create 4 lots of record to be developed with single-family dwellings. 2 of these proposed lots are deficient in at least 1 dimension and are the subject of this variance request. Proposed Lot 2A is a corner lot featuring 4,913 square feet in area, which falls short of the minimum 6,000 square feet required in an SRS suburban single-family residential district. Also, its approximately 74-foot depth falls short of the required minimum of 100 feet. At nearly 5,894 square feet in area, proposed interior Lot 2B falls short of the minimum 6,000 square feet required in an SRS district. The staff analyzed 34 neighboring properties. All 34 properties comply with the minimum area and depth requirements of this SRS district. Thus, granting the variances would confer a special privilege upon the applicant because every other property in the study area features a compliant lot area and compliant lot depth. There is no possible configuration of the proposed lots that would result in 4 totally compliant lots. However, the applicant does have the option of creating 3 compliant lots from the subject property. Therefore, staff recommends denial in that there are no special conditions that are peculiar to the site. Literal interpretation of this ordinance would not deprive the applicant of commonly enjoyed rights. The variance will confer on the applicant special privilege. Strict adherence would not result in a demonstrable hardship, and the request is primarily for the convenience or profit of the owner. Therefore, staff recommends denial of this request.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? If you could come up, please.
Delano Locker. I'm just standing in for Mr. Raymond Grump. He was like to.
If you could give your address for the record.
2829 Somerset Drive.
Go ahead.
He just wanted me to stand in for him and say he would like to do he would do 3 lots, 3 houses instead of 4. So he was thinking that's up to the board, wherever y'all decide, or he can visit at a later date and get back with y'all with that.
Okay.
But he'll sell it for 3.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else here in support of the applicant for BZA docket 007-25? Anyone here in opposition? If you could come up, please.
Good morning. Michael Nolan, 300 Finland Place, New Orleans, Louisiana. I reside about 150 feet from the proposed variance, the lot in question. I'd like to observe, first of all, that the report by the staff is adequate, is accurate, and I'm in support of that. I want to point out some objections to the application that has been filed, and if the gentleman who spoke on behalf of the owner would take this back to the owner, we'd greatly appreciate it. We have more than 10 people here today from this neighborhood. That application was filed under a pretense of hardship, that the house was destroyed by a hurricane. That is not accurate. The house was demolished in 2013 by the owner, absentee owner, and because of its negligence. It was not destroyed by a hurricane. I want to point out that the 34 properties that were used in the sample in the neighborhood, the average square feet, these are very, very large lots in the Aurora subdivision. The average square feet is 19,600 square feet. And in this application, we're led to believe that the standard size for this area is 6,000 square feet. So where we live in this community, these lots are exceedingly large. They were done on purpose that way when they were re-subdivided more than 75 years ago. Lastly, I'd like to point out that adding 3 or 4, even 3 driveways, in addition to, rather than 1 on the General Meyer Avenue, is a serious hazard for safety. And I'll point out that the example of it is there was a fatality, an accident 1.5 years ago right in front of this property because of the lack of vision, being able to look as you turn off of one street onto General Meyer, and a 2-month-old baby was killed in that accident.
That's the end of your time, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Robert Zrabkowski, and I am the president of Aurora Gardens Neighborhood Association. This property is within the boundaries of that association. I've come representing that association in support of our neighbors and opposition to this request of subdivision. It's out of character with the neighborhood, and it clearly violates several zoning regulations with no benefit to the community, only to the owner. It looks to be completely motivated by maximizing the profit of the property, rather than, we'd love to see it developed. It's been an empty lot for some time, but developed properly in coordination with the prevailing structure of the neighborhood itself. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here in opposition? Come on.
My name is Casey Taylor. I live at 212 Norland Avenue, which is right around the corner from this property. And I am in support of what Mr. Nolan said previously, the prior speaker. I'd like to concur with everything he said, especially the safety issue. And to me, it just comes across as if these lots are being shoehorned into a small area. It's a would be very congested there, and I think it would represent a safety issue. Moreover, it would look completely different from the rest of the lots that are in our neighborhood that have been there for over 70 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dion Estopanol Semino. I live at 199 Lenox Court, directly across from the property. I am in opposition of this being divided into 4 or even 3 properties. I have almost 3/4 of an acre. Right now, there are 2 signs down on General Meyer. Although the speed limit is 35 miles an hour, motorcycles and cars go 50, 60 miles an hour down that street. It was mentioned there was a fatality. There have been multiple accidents. There have been multiple times cars have veered off and hit these oak trees. There is a magnolia and several oak trees on that property. I don't think they could be saved in order to cut this lot up the way that they are proposing. One is a magnolia tree, and if maybe I'm incorrect, y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we are not even allowed to touch those any longer. And also, there's a drainage issue. Back when Nagin was in office, I submitted an engineer's report. The culverts on the other side on my side of General Meyer, closest to Patterson, all the culverts are non-existent. So I get water to my knees in the front of my house. Thank God I do have a large lot. It only affects my pool periodically, not my home. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else here in opposition?
My name is Patrick Schaaf. I live on 165.
Could you pull the mic up just so we can?
Sorry. My name is Patrick Schaaf. I live on 165 Lenox Court. And since I've been there, I've only been there 3 years. I could attest to the traffic situation. We've almost been hit trying to cross over to go to Finland from General Meyer, as well as I feel if this one is allowed, it's only going to make way. The next property that comes up for sale, they're going to try to do another ordinance, and our nice half-acre, 3/4 acre lots are going to, it's just not going to look the same. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else here in opposition? The applicant has an opportunity to rebut.
I understand everybody's saying, but I have a good friend, man, Nano Architects. And
Make sure you're talking into the mic. It's just a little hard to hear you. Sorry. Thank you.
I understand what everybody else is saying, but I have Mr. Nano with me, Architects, and we were going to try to design the property with it and standing with the neighborhood. So the house that will be put there will be something that goes fine with the neighborhood of that area. So we're still looking at like trying to do 3 lots. 3 houses on that lot. Still to the 4. So we're gonna work it out.
Okay. Thank you. Questions from the board? Just a quick question. I know the applicant's representative indicated that the applicant was willing to go forward with 3 instead of 4 lots. In the event that that's the case, based upon the report, the applicant can do the 3 lots without need for any waivers?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
I think it's important for the neighbors to understand that you guys are referring to how the scale is for the other properties, and I see how majority of these properties usually don't have primary access off of General Meyer. In this case, this lot was previously accessed from Aurora. The problem we have is that, just keep in mind, I think someone mentioned that they didn't even want to see 3. We don't have the ability to downzone the property any further than what's already allowed within the CZO. So if they're allowed to still re-subdivide the property into 3 lots of record, they have that ability to do so based on the CZO. So just wanted to let you guys know that's something that even if this board was to provide a denial, they still have the right to subdivide the property up to that number of units. That's not and it wouldn't be to our discretion.
I'm sorry. We can answer the question, but just understand that we're at the point that we have the floor. You can't yell out from the audience. First, we have to get everything recorded on the mics for the fact that it's a public meeting. But the reason why I asked the question that I asked is that based upon by right, the property owner can re-subdivide this property into 3 lots without the need for any waivers, which means that they would have 3 legally compliant lots that wouldn't require any waivers. So that's why there would be no decision that we would have to make to allow for the property owner. It's not a question and answer, so I apologize. I know you're raising your hands, but we really are at the point that we're asking questions to staff or to the applicant. If you have any further questions that you may want to take up with staff, you can feel free to do that, but it's not really a back and forth for you to be able to ask us questions.
So I was only providing that context for you guys because I would hate to see the project advance. Then you're wondering what happened. Okay, so I'm just trying to provide as much clarity as we can as a board, so you're aware ahead of time before any motion is presented.
Are there any other questions from the board? Is there a motion?
Yeah, it's a motion in order.
Yes, proceed.
Madam Chair, with regards to BZA docket number 007-25, my motion is to accept the staff's report and move for denial of the requested waivers.
Thank you. With regards to BZA docket 007-25, it's been moved by Commissioner James, second by Commissioner Gonzalez, to deny the requested waivers, finding that the 9 criteria have not been met. Roll call vote. Todd James.
Yes.
Jose Alvarez. Oh, sorry. Ramiro Diaz.
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez.
Yay.
Jason Richards.
Yes.
And Candace Forrest. Yes. 5 yeas, no nays. The motion carries. Next item.
The next item is BZA 00825 for a property located at 5007 South Tonti Street. The request is for a variance from the provisions of Article 11, Section 11.3A1, Table 11.2A, Article 11, Section 11.3B3, and Article 22, Section 2211D2 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance to permit the renovation of a single-family dwelling with excessive impervious surface in the front yard and parking in the front yard between the front facade and front property line after the fact. In accordance with Article 11, Section 11.3, the maximum impervious surface in the front yard in the HURD1 Historic Urban Two-Family Residential District is 40%, and front yard parking is not permitted. The applicant is proposing to permit a single-family dwelling with 100% impervious surface in the front yard and front yard parking. As an interior lot that is approximately 46 feet in width, 100 feet in depth, and 4,600 square feet in area, the subject site exceeds the minimum backyard regulations for a single-family dwelling. Thus, the installation of excessive front yard paving and the creation of parking in the front yard to provide 4 off-street parking spaces for a single-family residence does not demonstrate a level of hardship as distinguished from mere inconvenience, as the site can provide a compliant impervious surface in the front yard and a compliant interior side yard parking pad on the Robert Street side of the site. Based on this report, staff believes that the requested variances of Article 11, Section 11.3A1, Table 11.2A, maximum impervious surface in the front yard, Article 11, Section 11.3B3, parking areas and pedestrian parkways, and Article 22, Section 2211D2, parking pad requirements for a single-family, two-family residential, failed to meet criteria 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 of the standards of variance for variances of Articles 4, Section 4.6F of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance, and that there are no special conditions that are peculiar to the land or structure. Literal interpretation of the ordinance will not deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the district. The variance will confirm the applicant's special privilege. The variance will alter the essential character of the locality. Strict adherence will not result in a demonstrable hardship. The request is primarily for the convenience or profit of the owner or the interested party. The variance will be detrimental to public welfare or injurious to the other property, and the variance will endanger the public safety. Therefore, staff recommends denial.
If you could give your name and address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Cassie Rye. I'm the owner of the property being discussed. I've lived in Broadmoor for 43 years. I lived on Nashville for 20 years, and I've lived in this house for, actually, I lived in Nashville for 23 years, and I've lived in this house for 20 years. The only reason this case is coming before you is because my house was very gratefully for me recommended to have to be raised because of a multiple repetitive loss. I entered into the contract with FEMA and the city of New Orleans to raise the house. About, I think it was in 2021 they started the proceedings. Anyway, it was rather, for whatever reason, it took them over a year to raise my house. This is a very, very, very low section of Broadmoor. In request of actually parking in the front of my yard, I had sent 2 clips from WWL on people rolling down the boats on the corner of Robert and South Tonty. The only reason, as I said, this is coming before you is because the contractor who was responsible for raising the house secured all the permits. I told that contractor what my plans were for the front yard. I was never told that I needed to get another permit. To actually finish the front yard in this way, all of the permits were obtained by the contractor and they were invisible to me. I did have a professional landscape company do this because I wanted it to, I wanted it to be done well. And that landscape person asked about permits, and I said, well, the people who raised the house secured all the permits. So I was not aware that I needed something special before I did this. I noticed in the comments that the recommendation was that I could have used the parking as we look at the house. On the right of the house, that could have been supposedly a driveway. That area is less than 9 feet. It's extremely difficult to get cars in and out. The only reason I decided to go ahead and finish all that was because they mispoured the concrete to create the stairwell. This is a very, it's an unusual structure type. It's called a raised basement house. So the very first thing that says there are no special conditions that are peculiar to the land or structure. Having a raised basement house is a very different structure type. So
that's the end of your time, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here in support of the applicant for BZA docket 008-25? Anyone here in opposition? Any questions from the board?
Just a quick question to the applicant. You made mention that the area that's since been filled with pavers on the right-hand side of the property, if you're facing the front, is less than 9 feet, but your survey document states that it's 9.5 feet.
It's less than 9 feet, and I don't know which part they took it from because there's a jut out. If you see the fence area where the neighbor's fence starts, it's that juts out.
So from your survey, and we have to rely on that because it is a stamped document. It actually says 9.8 feet, and it does show the fence slightly encroaching into your property. And if that's the neighbor's fence, it's their responsibility or yours to have that fence moved, so it does fall within a compliant plane, so it does not prevent. So it does not encroach onto your property. One, the second part is the way the parking stall has been proposed doesn't have the appropriate depth of the compliant parking stall in order for it to exist where it's shown. And this is something that we see this time and time again. This is not a one-off situation where we can't just grant a waiver to create a non-compliant parking stall.
Yes, sir. The you know, I noticed on the comps that like, for instance, exactly around the corner, there was another raised basement house. There is no place for people to park. I can't even leave on the weekend. I've already lost one car to flooding completely, and it's an extremely busy corner there. The neighbor directly across the street from me has had seven accidents with people slamming into their cars. It's a very busy area. So, you know, the one right around the corner was not used in the comps, and that was a raised basement house, and they're parking in the front. For instance, it's a very unusual situation. The other thing is that I was very careful to make the front of my house be lower than my neighbor's house so they wouldn't incur any damage from anything that was there. So as I said, if I had known beforehand, I could have taken care of it, but I was not informed from the contractors who did it that I needed to do something different. So it was, I know this is after the fact, but it's an unusual structure. I hear what you're saying, but even the house that was used in a comp right around the corner that was actually in that said it's non-compliant because it's taking up too much space in the front yard, that's a raised house too. Raising the house put a lot of extra problems on it because the porch and the stairwell after you raise the house alters the structure and eats up that much of the property. So it's a real hardship. It wasn't the original house. The original house, I had room. I didn't do this because, you know, I didn't create this because I just wanted to. I created this because the front yard was eaten up.
So again, I understand what you're presenting, but we have standards we have to still stay with it. And so anything, for it to be considered a compliant parking stall for off-street, there's dimensions that have to be met. And the depth of what's shown in your plan, I believe I saw 16 feet.
No, it's at least 17 feet because I have the very small car.
Okay, so, but here's the thing, it's not based on your vehicle. Is based on what the zoning ordinance establishes as a parking footprint. And so what's shown is 16'8", and at a minimum, I believe it needs to be 18, correct, from staff?
Yeah, and the survey is actually, the survey says 15'10",
so even further.
It might be 16 to the sidewalk, but
that's what I was
property
thinking.
line is.
I mean, there's no, how do you propose to have parking for a 4-bedroom house?
So what Commissioner James mentioned is that there is the ability to have a compliant parking on the side where you were saying that based on your measurements, it wasn't, was it 9
Yeah,
9
she's
feet?
mentioning that it's less than 9 feet, but the
But the survey is
documents
saying that there is a compliant parking space. So that's why that even furthers the argument that this space is not only insufficient, but you have an alternative location that is compliant.
And so another part, so you mentioned about with the repairs that you did, that it's lower than your neighbors. Well, legally, you need to do that because you can't have a negative runoff onto the properties next to you. So,
Well, I'm glad I complied with that.
yeah, so I mean, that's something that's there, but then the second piece of this, again, does come into where that compliance stall can exist on your site. And if we have a survey document that they've certified and stamped confirming the size of your side yard condition where you can put a compliant parking stall, that's technically where you should park on the property.
Is there a requirement that it has to be so much from the neighbor's yard?
I think traditionally it's 1 foot is the 1 foot requirement, but I mean, we've seen conditions where if there's a strip condition provided, you could still provide that stall, and that's when you would have a hardship because you have no other place to put the compliant parking stall. So if you were to have come in under that provision, I mean, I'm one person, I think that's more likely to see some latitude being granted for it versus just parking the car in front of the property. And one thing that has been pretty straightforward is that they do try to, the CZO tries to prevent parking in front of the building proper. They want you to be able to park in the side yard condition or beyond it, or beyond the front edge of the home. So that's, it makes it really hard just based off of looking at the site. The survey shows that you can have a compliant area. And I mean, another big part to this is with the excessive amount of paving in the front yard, you mentioned the issues about flooding in the area. Traditionally, having this amount of paving exacerbates that problem by having so much paving within the front yard and non-permeable.
Well,
And that's
actually,
what I was
though,
going to mention is that you not only have the parking condition, that's a problem, but you have virtually 100% of the property paved. So that's an additional, there's multiple waiver requests. It's not just the parking, but it's also the excessive paving. And I was actually going to defer to Commissioner Diaz on, I know he probably has something to weigh in on the paving to move to either something that's pervious or to remove it to come within compliance of the 40% that's permitted.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is it pavers or is it concrete?
no, it's pavers.
And what's under it?
Nothing, just pavers. I mean, there's nothing under the pavers.
But did they set it? They didn't set it on a slab. It's
No,
gravel
it's-
underneath.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, and as I said, I would have done something different if I had been told. I mean,
Yeah.
I've lived in the neighborhood for a really long time.
Well, if
but
it's-
I
yeah,
can't
well,
park on the street.
Yeah. So what I was gonna say is, there's a curb cut. Well, you have a curb cut, but it looks like it's a rollover curb
Yes.
along that street. So moving the parking over wouldn't be too difficult. I'm not sure what the city would require for the other driveway.
Probably reinstate the
Probably
curb.
reinstate the curb. But if it's pavers, pulling them up and putting some grass back or something that's permeable is not unreasonable. And if you have gravel, I said that you have gravel further back, you could reset some of those pavers with gaps. As long as there were gaps between the pavers, they're permeable, right? So if they're tight next to each other, maybe I'd be interested to know what kind of pavers they are, because if they're actually permeable pavers, then
It's a
maybe it's
different
not an
animal.
issue. So I mean, I was going to recommend that you talk to a landscape architect or somebody that knows a little bit about green infrastructure and see what can be done, because it may be a matter of just undoing a few things and not a big investment. But the driveway looks like it should work on the right side. So you've got a compliant parking space. It's a matter of opening some of that up and letting the water,
And I'll have
percolate
to
in.
get with the neighbor too, because there's a problem with the fences. But I'm not sure, as I said, I'm not sure why it was
Yeah.
cited.
Yeah.
But
In a couple places that there's a healthy amount of space on the side there, so, in the report.
Yep.
But I would recommend deferring and kind of looking a little bit more into what kind of pavers you have and if they're actually impermeable or not, because they may actually have some space, because a lot of the pavers have keyways in them so that they don't, so they still let the water through, so.
where do I bring that information to?
Back to staff. Just confirm with staff, they could look at it. So if you wanted to do a deferral to check what the compliance may be on the paving system, that's fine. The only other thing I see is there's the existing manhole or access cover right there that falls right in the middle of that driveway. So I know that would make it a little bit more cumbersome on how they would need to reinstate the curb. You see how it's in the middle of the driveway? It's just something that I know would be a little bit, it's not as direct or straightforward in terms of how to deal with that point repair. But
Right, and that was always there.
I understand, and that's, my point is about reinstating what he mentioned earlier. If you were to pull up the apron of the driveway and put grass strip back, there's still that access panel that's there, so I don't know how that may have some impact, and I'm not sure if that's a Sewage and Water Board or a DPW access point.
Well, that's most likely off her property, right? But
Yeah, but she would have to get coordination with that agency in terms of any repair to that piece.
You can understand how difficult the situation is.
Yeah, and we're trying to find a way to make it, make it work so you can bring it into compliance without too much heartache. So
Thank you.
we're trying to find creative solutions here. I mean, there's a few organizations uptown that started because of flooding in the neighborhood, like Front Yard Initiative with the Urban Conservancy. The Urban Conservancy would be a good group to reach out to. They have a whole list of landscape professionals that can help with this kind of project, and grants for depaving as well, so. the motion's in order.
Yeah, I think staff indicated a deferral, so are you in agreement with doing a deferral to try to look at, I think you wanted to look into the pavers that you have?
Yes, I would really appreciate that.
Staff, just thinking of timing, if that would be 30 or 60, just given the reporting deadlines.
I would suggest 60 because the next meeting, the deadline for that is actually 2 weeks from today. It's a little bit earlier.
There's some
That's what I
distractions
figured.
between now and then as well.
The
Yeah,
few-
60 makes sense, and it doesn't seem like a emergency. And once again, I would reach out to some of the, look at the Urban Conservancy's website and see what resources they have there.
I do have a question. Would it be possible where the pavers come together? Could you like bore holes right there?
Well, it would be more a matter of like kind of picking some up and resetting them so that there's space between them. That would be the way that, and then looking at the percentage that you have. So, creating some places to put plants, basically, is what we're looking for. So whether it's ground cover or native plants or something to suck up the water, because the runoff from paving is instantaneous, right? So it just goes right into the storm drainage. So when it's working, it gets overburdened very quickly. And I do acknowledge this is the lowest part of town, and there's a lot of challenges with flooding, but we try not to make it worse with more paving. So can I make a motion to defer? This is, what are we on here? Docket BZA 0825. I move to defer for 60 days.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your help.
Second.
Thank you. With regards to BZA docket 008-25, it's been moved by Commissioner Diaz, second by Commissioner Alvarez to defer the item 60 days. Give the applicant time to look at some alternatives with regards to the paving. Roll call vote. Todd James.
Yes.
Jose Alvarez.
Yay.
Ramiro Diaz.
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez.
Yay.
Jason Richards.
Yes.
And Candace Forrest, yes. 6 yeas, no nays. The motion carries. Next item.
Item 7, docket number BZA 009-25. This request is for the provisions of Article 12, Section 12.3.8.1, Table 12-2 lot area of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance to permit the creation of lots with insufficient lot area. The current development of the site includes a two-family development on Lot 6A with an adjacent vacant lot comprising Lot 7. The proposed scope of work at 2816 through 2818 St. Louis Street includes the re-subdivision of the existing lots to create new property lines located 7 feet from the existing duplex apartment building and remedies the building's current placement on the lot line. The intended use of the new vacant lot is for a future single-family residence for the owner who lives on site now. The proposed lot lines would create 2 lots of records with insufficient lot area for both a two-family dwelling and a single-family dwelling respectively. The subdivision aims to correct a structure that's built over an existing lot line. However, the subdivision could be reconfigured to allow for 1 lot of record, which would be compliant for a two-family record. Additionally, within the HUMU zoning district, there are no lot area minimums, lot width minimums, nor interior side yard setbacks for non-residential uses. The HUMU also permits dwellings above the ground floor, provided 800 square feet per dwelling unit is allotted. As the current lot is vacant, it could be developed as a non-residential use and would not be beholden to the lot area requirements in this district. Further, developing a vacant lot for non-residential use in a mixed-use district would further promote the goals and intentions of encouraging active retail and personal service use along the ground floor, with residential uses above the ground floor. Staff believes that the requested variance fails to meet criteria 2, 4, and 6 of the standards for variances of Article 4, Section 4.6.f of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance, in that literal interpretation of the ordinance would not deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the district. The applicant will the variance will confer on the applicant special privilege, and strict adherence would not result in a demonstrable hardship. Therefore, staff recommends denial of BZA docket 009-25. However, should the board find that the request meets all 9 approval standards, staff recommends 1 proviso.
If you could give your name and address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Alex Modinger. I'm the architect for the project. My address is 1558 Annunciation Street, New Orleans, Louisiana, 70130. The first thing, kind of outside of my initial statement, was the comments on the nature of the block and HUMU. A lot of the focus in the report seems to be on the commercial nature of a basic HUMU zone. This is along the Greenway. This stretch is actually cut off and is, I believe, 100% residential on your block and the adjacent block as well. But then the next block down, we have a commercial development at the bridge location. So really, this is more of a residential neighborhood. Why I address tout ensemble, which we normally don't do in the historic districts, but this stretch has the residential feel. My client really is looking to be able to title the two lots separately. He is getting married soon, so it allows an opportunity for that single-family residence. After we got the denial in the report, I do raise the question as an alternative option. Essentially, we're looking to reinstate the original property line. We are requesting this because of the stair. There can be modifications that could be done to the building. We could do a covenant or servitude that covers the stair as well, if it's more acceptable to simply reinstate the old property line. But we're open to suggestion as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here in support of the applicant for BZA docket 009-25?
Hi, my name is Brandon Webb, and I'm the owner at 2816-18 St. Louis. And I just want to concur with Alex said that I'm just trying to, build a single-family home in the future, for me and my future wife. And that's pretty much it. I just kind of want to subdivide it back to the original, 2 lots. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else here in support? Anyone in opposition? Any questions from the board?
So question for the applicant or perhaps the architect. So what you were saying in lieu of this subdivision, which moves the property line to be 3 foot from the stair, you would just make, you would propose to get rid of this variance, put some sort of servitude on the existing lot 7 for the stair? That's what you're proposing to do?
And restore the original property line.
Okay.
Either way, we're talking about substandard lots. As I cite in my report, there are multiple lots up in the 300-foot vicinity of this lot that are in exactly the same condition or close to it, within about 10% of the required lot area, as the geometry slides across for the layout of the block with the canal. So I believe in this block, like half of the lots are substandard and half exceed by about 5 or 10%.
Understood. So question then for staff, and I apologize, the property viewer is not working for me right now. So this is currently 2 lots?
Yes.
Okay. And the current 2 lots are actually substandard, or they are not substandard?
I'm not quite sure if they're currently substandard. The issue is that the way the lot lines are configured, it cuts into the staircase. So
yeah, correct. Yeah.
Even if the same, like for the vacant lot next door, because it's vacant, it doesn't actually have a residential use on it. There are no lot area requirements for non-residential uses. So I can't really say if it's substandard.
I see.
If I may, actually, due to title research and my discussions with R.W. Krebs, this is not 2 lots. This is currently 1 lot. It was at some point unified into a single lot. There was a lumber yard on the property I see in the Sanborn maps. I initially told my client when he first called me several months ago that he just needed to do a debulking. We went through sending him to do that, but that was not what needed to be done here. The surveyor, Krebs, did confirm that this needs to be re-subdivided.
Okay.
It is 1 lot right now.
Okay. So then I'm kind of back to my original question, which is, if you were to put it back the way it was, do you need to be in front of us?
I think we still do.
Well, but then that's the problem. I think if understood from staff, there's not a minimum lot dimension. Lot area, correct?
Not for non-residential uses, but for single and 2-family there are.
So, and that's the thing, they're trying to convert it to that piece, so then, yes, it is a substandard lot, so yeah, they would have
Okay.
to be in front of us.
So then we would either need to defer this for a little bit of time for you to get a new survey, if that's your preference, or, or take action on this as it's proposed currently.
Because only thing I would mention is, and I know he's trying to advise his client. So Alex, the only other thing, I've seen this in the past where the servitude or easement has been granted, but then that does have some impact on what's the buildable area.
It does.
Of course, right? Or how the single-family structure can be developed on 7A.
So the building on 6A1, I've not been inside of. That staircase is the access to the second floor apartment. It would require some modification of the building, but that's an option that would allow my client to defer costs on modification of the building, but still re-subdivide now. We're dealing with some very advanced nest building here.
Yeah, we see that.
Yeah, I guess that was my question. Is there a way to incorporate that stair back into the building that's next door, or is that?
I believe there, in the case of the footprint of the building, the fact that it operates as at some point as a duplex with the 2 entries, I believe that we would all agree that there's a reasonable layout inside that could be modified.
How many units is it now?
2.
So it is
It is a duplex, yes.
I guess one more question about the existing building. How far off the kind of old property line is it? Is it right on the old property line, or is it off it?
I think it's inches.
It's inches,
I think
yeah.
it's inches, yeah.
So that's not ideal either, right?
Just enough to argue a 1-hour fire separation on that wall, and maybe, but still, it's a means of egress over the property line, so that's
Right.
something we'd have to deal with.
And there's some existing openings on that wall.
That could be brought into compliance.
True. But
It's saying, wait, no.
Yeah. It's definitely an exceptional lot.
Sliver.
Yeah.
Trust me, I pushed this one away twice, saying, no, this is a debulking. This should be a very simple issue, but it's kind of a little puzzle.
Yeah, it doesn't give that dimension to the cross-cut from the edge of building on what's shown in the Krebs survey. So maybe the deferral is a little bit more appropriate. That way we could at least see what either configuration would be, Alex.
I apologize.
No, I'm sorry. Maybe a deferral is probably a little bit more applicable right now, only so that you could come back and maybe show the 2 forms of documentation, whether it be in you're reinstating it to the center cut line.
Yeah.
And documenting what would be the servitude or easement on that piece.
Agreed. It would also give my client a little more time to think about the 2 options.
Right. And the separation right now, what's also not very clear, oh, never mind. It's proposes 3.6 feet from the edge of, I'm assuming that's the balcony, to the proposed property line is what's shown in that Krebs
I
dot?
believe what we're trying to essentially do is set ourselves up for 10 feet between buildings when a single family would be going in.
Right, but you could always still handle that via you could do your own setback and have a larger setback as opposed to trying to let the
Yeah, I
cart
was
drive the
basically trying to
horse.
set it up so whatever he did come to with it would not be painted into a corner.
Right.
Because it is tight. You end up with a very narrow. I mean, you're dealing with a 25 to 28 foot lot. That's.
Here's
you're
why,
gonna
I'm,
get
yeah,
1,500 square
yeah, and I
feet.
think even if you came back with, and so here's the thing, I think the zoning would allow for that balcony condition to either be 3 feet or 2 feet away from that property line. Just confirm what that condition would be. I would strongly advise just maybe looking at that configuration. And let's say, however, you may develop the floor plan for the single family going into the new lot, that may create a condition where you could have a 1 hour wall on a portion of the property and then create some type of setback condition so it's not just a flat wall on the North Dupree side of the property. So maybe just look at how to look at it through a couple different configurations so you could maximize, at least increase the square foot of what this lot would be.
Yeah.
Instead of just creating such a narrow lot condition at 25.
Yeah,
When I was studying this, I was like, this turns into like almost like an 18-foot wide home.
Yeah, that was one more question, Cameron, for staff is, let's say that if this went through like this, it's substandard lot for single family. Somebody comes to develop single family, to build that building, they're gonna be back here?
My assumption is yes, because we don't have any, like, we don't know about setbacks, rear yard, things
Yeah.
like that, so.
Right. So I would echo Mr. James' comment, is that if there's a way you could adjust this property line to get it to where this lot is compliant with the minimum lot area per dwelling unit, you're giving, if this was to be sold, you're selling it in a way that it's much closer to being compliant.
If I recall correctly in studying the lots, I don't believe we can get both of them there. I think they were both in my report, I state that they might have been substandard even before.
Yeah, well, so I would, this is just me speaking, I don't know what the board would vote, but if, we could approve for the lot that would be 6A, a variance now, that building exists, it's not going anywhere. The lot 7A would then be compliant with whoever wants to build, more compliant than it currently is with whoever wants to build later.
We have a couple of scenarios where we studied the buildable area on the lot, so we can go through that and provide a little bit of insight on that.
Better
and chat with the
context.
client. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And also have, if we need to, have Krebs do a separate design with the property line moved over to.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think tabling.
Okay.
So the 60 would be
I'm sorry?
60 days would be sufficient to get
I
all of
think
that
given
done?
the calendar schedule, yeah, I would be a little concerned about getting the survey turned around in the next 2 weeks back to y'all.
Sure. Any other questions from the board?
No, I'd make a motion.
Yeah.
Okay, regarding docket BZA 009-25, I would move to defer the matter for 60 days.
Second.
Thank you. With regards to BZA docket 009-25, it's been moved by Commissioner Richards, second by Commissioner James to defer the item 60 days. Roll call vote, Todd James,
Yes.
Jose Alvarez,
Yes.
Ramiro Diaz,
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez,
Yay.
Jason Richards.
Yes.
And Candace Forrest, yes. 6 yeas, no nays, the motion carries. Next item?
Thank you for your consideration.
Item 8, docket number BZA 010-25. BZA docket 010-25 is for a property located at 5310 Laurel Street. This request is for variances from the provision of Article 21, Section 21.6.AA.1 and Article 21, Section 21.7, Table 21-2 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance to permit the conversion of a two-family dwelling into a single-family dwelling with the construction of steps with insufficient distance from the side lot line. The Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance requires a minimum of 2 feet from the interior lot line for porches, steps, and stoops in the HURD2 Historic Urban Two-Family Residential District. The applicant is seeking a variance to permit the construction of a side porch with insufficient distance, 0 feet from the interior lot line. The Department of Safety and Permits has determined an additional variance request may be required prior to staff's review of the Board of Zoning Adjustments request. Therefore, staff recommends a 60-day deferral of the requested waivers.
Thank you. You could give your name and address for the record?
Sure. Daniel Winkert with Wink Architecture. I'm the architect for the project. I live at 3210 Dumaine Street.
Did you have anything that you wish to add?
Sure, yeah, so we applied for the variance, we originally applied for the permit with the side porch, and they said, no, you'll need a variance for that. So we took the side porch off, went ahead and got the review, got the permit. We're under construction, the owner wants to have the side porch if possible, and we would have the steps that lead up to it and then back. And then now it seems like there are some concerns with the rear porch, which was already submitted, reviewed, and approved and built. So I'm not sure why that is confusing this issue with the side porch that we're asking for. It's a little odd, I think.
We can't really speak to the questions. At this point, the staff has requested a deferral, and we really don't have a report. So we just don't really have much that we can give you at this point.
They don't have a report on the side porch that was?
No, if you listen to the staff's comments, safety and permits indicated that there may be need for an additional waiver. We don't even know what that additional waiver is. So before they reviewed the request, staff has asked for a 60-day deferral.
Yeah, sounds,
I'm just explaining at this point, we are at the point that staff has asked us to defer the matter 60 days to continue to do some additional research.
But do you have to grant the staff's request?
Well, we don't have
my request was, they should have done a report. I'm not sure I understand why they didn't.
All right, so let's make it real simple.
Well, let me get through public comment
Sure,
before we get into this discussion. Is there anyone else here in support of the applicant for BZA docket 010-25? Anyone here in opposition? Okay, you can go ahead, Mr. Commissioner James.
Thank you. So, we're simply trying to provide an opportunity for staff to give further context so we can confirm actually what's in part your question. So by us moving and following staff's request for the 60-day deferral, we could get more clarity for your answer as well as their time to generate a report to confirm what that waiver request really needs to be. So does that make sense for you?
It does, except I guess I'm wondering if there's another issue, could I do a separate application for that issue? If there is indeed an issue, which I'm not sure that there is. Meanwhile, I had a request for this that was supposed to be.
So they're
heard on
trying to
this date.
capture everything right now so you don't have to come back for more at a later date. So,
But now I have to wait another 60 days, so that's a little unfair. It's just.
staff.
One, I would say that the staff is also okay with a 30-day deferral. I know the shorter turnaround for the next meeting, it's only a couple weeks, but we are open to that as well. That would reduce the timeline for the applicant to wait. And I'm also happy to provide clarifications about the reason for deferral and the additional waiver if you would like.
You offered it up, go ahead.
Sure. So the plans that were, so this is an after-the-fact situation. The permit was issued, and the plans that were approved on the building permit show a rear porch or a rear deck. It's actually labeled both in different plans, but it shows that it is located in the required rear yard, which is the 15 feet of depth. So our staff was clarifying with the Department of Safety and Permits whether they were classifying it as a porch or a deck, because if it's a deck, because it is over 18 inches in height, it's considered part of the main structure, and this would be kind of an after-the-fact waiver. So we were getting that determination from them.
So I guess, staff, if you're okay with 30 days, I don't think it's, all right. Madam Chair, for motions in order.
Yes, proceed.
Madam Chair, regard to BZA docket number 010-25, my motion's for modify this to a 30-day deferral.
Second.
Thank you. With regards to BZA docket 010-25, it's been moved by Commissioner James, second by Commissioner Gonzalez to defer the matter 30 days at the request of staff. Roll call vote, Todd James.
Yes.
Jose Alvarez.
Yes.
Ramiro Diaz.
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez.
Yay.
Jason Richards.
Yes.
And Candace Forrest, yes. 6 yeas, no nays. The motion carries.
Item 9, docket
30.
number BZA 011-25.
The next item is BZA docket 011-25 for a property located at 222 Walnut Street. This request is for a variance for the provisions of Article 11, Section 11.1.3.a, Table 11-2A, to permit the retention of excessive impervious surface in the front yard after the fact. The comprehensive zoning ordinance requires a maximum impervious surface area in the front yard of 40% in the HURS Historic Urban Single Family Residential District. The applicant is proposing 62% of maximum impervious surface area and requesting a waiver of 38%. The applicant's site plans indicate the existing structure with after-the-fact installation of 429 square feet of impervious surface area, including a paved driveway and walkway in the front yard. Although there was an existing curb cut into the street, the brick paved driveway has been created without a permit. The staff believes the requested waiver of Article 11, Section 11.3.8.1, Table 11-2A, maximum impervious surface in front yard fails to meet criteria 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 9 of the standards for variances of Article 4, Section 4.6.f of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance, and that 1, there are no special conditions that are peculiar to the land or structure. 2, literal interpretation of the ordinance would not deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the district. 4, the variance will confer on the applicant special privilege. 5, the variance will alter the essential character of the locality. 6, strict adherence would not result in demonstrable hardship. 7, the request is primarily for the convenience or profit of the owner or other interested party. 8, variance will be detrimental to public welfare or injurious of other property. And 9, the variance will impair the adequate supply of light or air to the adjacent property, increase street congestion, or increase danger of fire or danger of public safety. Therefore, staff recommends denial of the requested variance of Article 11, Section 11.3.8.1, maximum impervious surface area in front yard.
Is the applicant present for BZA docket 011-25?
Good morning. Priscilla Galvez on behalf of Zach Smith Consulting and Design, 1000 South Norman C. Francis Parkway. Good morning, everybody. We're here requesting a waiver for the front yard impervious surface to be over the allowed max of 40%. It's notable to mention that we're requesting this waiver with minimal information, as the deficiency started prior to the property owner's purchase in 2023. So when the property owners purchased this property in 2023, the front yard impervious was well over 40%, but they did increase those deficiencies slightly. Being that we don't have the best information from the past, because we don't have contact with the previous property owners, it's still up in the air what was the original front yard impervious, but our educated guess will be around 59% to 60%. So they increased it about 2%. And I did want to clear up the record of the amount of waiver that we're requesting. If it's at 62% and it has to be 40%, wouldn't the waiver be 22%? I could be wrong, but I'll continue. So yes, as mentioned, these deficiencies were inherited by the property owners, and they were actively trying to fix the violations once they came into the open. This property has no previous violations prior to the one in June of 2024, which is the one that we're helping the property owners with currently. When they first got that violation, they tried to get a permit for the unpermitted driveway and the unpermitted paving that they did. I think something slipped through the cracks on their end, and that's when they started pursuing the variance, which something also slipped through the cracks, and that's when they inquired with us. So we piggybacked on top of their previous application that they applied for in June 2024, and we just sent in some updated information. And as mentioned, it's a little hard to go off of the previous information that was submitted and the current one, because it was never clear what was there in the first place. So we're here requesting the variance to see if there's a possibility to keep the paving as is, or if we could come to a sort of neutral area and try to agree on a percentage of what was inherited to them at one point in time, or if we could come to some sort of agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in support of the applicant for BZA docket 011-25? Anyone here in opposition? Any questions from the board?
Question for the applicant about the survey. So there's a lot of dates on the survey. I'm looking at it. It's page maybe 17 of our report. It's stating, it has a date on it, March 18th. Can you just clarify for us, is this a survey of the current condition or the prior condition?
I believe it's the prior condition. When I resent our application packet, it included a current survey. And it should be from around January.
7th, 2025?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, so that piece of paper we have that's a survey, that's the current condition.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It says January 7th.
It's got an original date, March 18th.
Yeah, March 18th.
Which
Yeah,
was
I
just
think-
my follow-up question was, did they survey it back then? And do they have that in the file?
I don't believe so, Mr. Richards.
What they're saying is that if I'm reading this correctly, it's stating that was a survey on the in March of 22, and then it's confirming found as shown. So it still is the same condition from 22, if I'm interpreting this correctly.
Okay, all right. All right, so then, yeah, follow-up question to that. So when was this building renovated? If the original survey was 22, when did this site work happen?
I believe it happened between December 2023, the time of their purchase, and the beginning of 2024.
And your client, the current building owner, did or did not make these improvements?
Yes, sir. The latest ones to bring us to where we at now, they did make those improvements, unpermitted.
Okay. And then the building itself, which was damaged, was renovated before it was sold?
Yes, sir, in 2022, and they did receive the proper permits for those renovations.
Understood.
In terms of the excessive paving, I'm looking at the letter that was submitted, and I'm just not seeing what would be considered the hardship to remove the paving to come into compliance.
Yes, ma'am. I think our angle, the main hardship here would be that they inherited these deficiencies. Of course, it doesn't make it better that they increased it, but I'm glad you asked that question because we are willing to try to come up with some sort of plan of removing some of this paving or trying to put something impermeable just to try to decrease some of those deficiencies.
And if I look at the image of what's shown before versus the current condition, if you look at the image before that has the pod shown on it, I think the most of what I'm seeing is the worst case condition is that they did straighten out the paved condition, the driveway component.
So I guess I'm confused. So the picture that was in the staff report is a different condition. So I'm just trying to understand what was the previous. I'm trying to find it now.
Yeah, it's on page 20.
So then what was the image from
It says
figure?
after.
Right, so looking at figure 4 from the staff report, what's,
So there's that must have been a condition before the initial improvement to the property. back in 2019. What they're saying is that the property was acquired in 22,
23.
and what's shown in the before images submitted by them is the 22, 23 timeframe.
Okay.
So all these changes are in the
Right.
right of way. All these changes are in the right of way.
There's one small improvement that did happen within the property itself, and I think that's what Francia is making a mention about, the slight 2% increase of what's the area.
Yeah, I
So
see
we're not
that.
reviewing the right-of-way improvement, we're looking at what's beyond the fence line.
And if there was a way that we could come to terms with something, the applicants already, the property owners are submitted for a driveway and curb cut permit to try to fix that violation for all the paving on the right of way as well.
Understood.
So what we're really dealing with is, appears to be
And the
basically-
driveway is not before us, it's on, it's the, it's just
on-site.
the paving.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it was just some edging around the.
Right, they
the
just
green-
straightened it out.
The green, and it was already there before.
But you said that they're already working through the curb cut permit with DPW to get that.
Yes,
resolved.
but DPW wanted us to come here first to see what happens. It was a long story, guys. A lot of back and
I'm
forth.
gonna leave that one alone.
I mean, yeah.
One has nothing to do with the other.
It's just frustrating. Sorry, I was just saying, it's just really frustrating the number of times that we get paving stuff that comes before us because it's just done, and then somebody buys a building, and now we're,
Having to deal with it. Yeah, it's like,
it's just, there's no process for reviewing this stuff.
right.
So what is the property owner's plan to reduce, I'm not trying to get into a negotiation of how much, but I'm just trying to understand where are they in terms of what they're intending to remove so that we at least know what we're starting from.
Ms. Candace, just to confirm, you said what's the plan to remove some of the paving? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you were indicating that the property owner was indicating that they were willing to remove some of the paving. So I'm just trying to understand what is the amount that's going to ultimately be in question.
Realistically speaking, we would like to reach whatever was there prior to their purchase. And we don't have an exact number for that since we don't have a survey from back then. We don't have a plan showing, like the plans are from 2022. They don't even have lines. You can't really distinguish how the driveway looked, But the discussions that I've had with her, it would be two options of either removing some of the pavement from the driveway area or by the sidewalk area and replacing it with a permeable component. And I believe it would be somewhere between like 70, 80 square feet to try to match what was there before, just using what we have, like pictures and things like that. I believe the closest number I could give you for the permeability, the impervious surface that was there before was around 59%. So if we could,
Let's try this out as a different approach, because I think we're gonna be playing, we're chasing a imaginary number if we try that
Right.
approach, okay? Looking at what the condition is and not trying to put further due burden on this one. In order to help mitigate what is the new condition, is there the potential to maybe put a trench drain or something to that effect, maybe across what's that larger paved area?
Well, yeah,
To
that-
do a capture for runoff.
Yeah, and the other thing you could do is cut windows into it.
Yep.
And then do permeable paving in the windows.
Right.
Yeah, it's tricky though, because as you said, even looking back at aerial photos, there were massive trees there that, fell on the
Right.
house, so you can't see from the aerials.
Yes, sir.
And street view, you can see that it was brick, but it doesn't necessarily mean it was permeable, right?
Right.
So, I mean, it seems like you kind of need to make a sketch and figure out
You
what the
would, right.
percentages are.
Yeah.
I was just jumping up, and since I didn't speak before, Zach Smith, 1000 South Norman C. Francis. It seems, especially so that it doesn't jam up the workings too much.
coming back with you guys in 1 month just with a proposed kind of sketch about how to get that down, we'll call it under 60%, with using some reasonable ways to kind of cut. But today, for what it's worth, sometimes we got to say the elephant out loud that you guys know. It was important, that this discussion be had, that we get to this point and have that kind of pressure come so that it supports what we've been asking for, so that that client can really authorize us to go take those actions. But I think I think 30 days or less would be plenty of time to get something back in a week ahead of time for the next meeting, so that you guys can see and say, we're comfortable with this.
Yeah, and Zach, just so you know, what we've been doing with groundwork lately is actually casting concrete and leaving holes, because we're finding that doing permeable paving everywhere gets all, lumped. But if you just do it under the car, that the client might, there's some examples around town of that's been done
Cast in
lately.
place with pre-cut holes.
Yes, so.
Wonderful. Precast holes.
Go the other way, cut them out and put the pavers in the middle.
Wonderful.
Any other questions from the board?
For motions in order.
Proceed.
Madam Chair, in regards to BZA docket number 011-25, my motion is for a 30-day deferral to give the applicant time to come back with a subsequent sketch and confirm what would be the proposed condition.
Second.
Thank you. With regards to BZA docket 011-25, it's been moved by Commissioner James, second by Commissioner Gonzalez, to defer the matter 30 days, giving the applicant time to come back with modifications to their plans. Roll call vote, Todd James.
Yes.
Jose Alvarez.
Yes.
Ramiro Diaz.
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez.
Yay.
Jason Richards.
Yes.
And Candace Forrest, yes. 6 yeas, no nays, the motion carries.
Item
Next
10, docket BZA 012-25.
BZA docket 012-25 is for a property located at 737 Eleanor Street and 5808 Magazine Street. This request is for variances from the provisions of Article 12. This request is for variances from the provisions of Article 12, Section 12.3.A.1, Table 12-2, rear yard setback, Article 22, Section 22.8.A.1.B.2, parking pad design location, Article 22, Section 22.8.A.1.B.3, permitted vehicle parking locations, corner side yard, Article 22, Section 22.8.B.1, dimensions of vehicle parking space depth, Article 22, Section 22.11.D.1, parking pad design location, Article 22, Section 22.11.D.2, parking pad design location, Article 22, Section 22.11.D.4, parking pad design dimensions, and Article 12, Section 12.3.A.1, Table 12-2, permeable open space. This request is to permit the creation of two insufficient lots, Lot A1, a residential lot, and Lot A2, a commercial lot. Staff believes that the requested variances of Article 12, Section 12.3.A.1, Table 12-2, rear yard setback fails to meet criteria 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the standards for variances of Article 4, Section 4.6.f of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. In addition, staff believes that the requested variances of Article 22, Section 22.8.A.1.B.2, parking pad design location, Article 22, Section 22.8.A.1.B.3, permitted vehicle parking locations, corner side yard, Article 22, Section 22.11.D.1, parking pad design location, and Article 22, Section 22.11.D.2, parking pad design location, failed to meet criteria 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the standards for variances of Article 4, Section 4.6.f of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. Further, staff believes that the requested variances of Article 22, Section 22.8.b.1, dimensions of vehicle parking space depth, and Article 22, Section 22.11.d.4, parking pad design dimensions fail to meet criteria 1, 5, 6, and 7 of the standards for variances of Article 4, Section 4.6.f of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. Lastly, staff believes that the requested variances of Article 12, Section 12.3.8.1, Table 12-2, permeable open space, fails to meet criteria 3, 6, and 7 of the standards for variances of Article 4, Section 4.6.f of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. In that, therefore, staff recommends denial of the requested variances.
Is the applicant present?
Garcia Galvez on behalf of Zach Smith Consulting and Design, 1000 South Norman C. Francis Parkway, New Orleans, Louisiana. Okay, for this one, we're discussing the 8 requested waivers that in conjunction to a proposed subdivision to separate the existing lot into 2 lots so that each structure can be on its own independent lot. 2 of the 8 waivers pertain to permeable open space and rear yard setback. The rest are for parking. As noted on the staff report, 80% of the surveyed properties are not complying with permeable open space either. So approving that waiver wouldn't create a special condition as it is shared throughout this area. For the rear yard setback waiver, which was triggered due to the proposed lot line, the proposed lot line is at the best and most appropriate location to not trigger more severe changes like building code violations. The lot itself, with the 2 existing buildings, it's only so much you could do to not trigger one thing or trigger the other thing. Most lots in this area don't have the peculiarity. Am I saying that right? Peculiarity?
Yeah.
Okay. Or the special condition of having 2 structures with different uses. So in this district, 2 structures are allowed to be on one lot. But for the most part, you don't see 2 structures, one being mixed use, commercial and residential, and one just being residential. 737 Eleanor has been existing for over 15 years. It's a historic single-family home in this area. And the parking that's triggering all these variances has been existing since 2019 and was permitted. Now, was it permitted without the proposed lot line? Yes, but it has been existing since 2019. And no additional changes are being requested with this subdivision or the variances. The variances will not alter the essential character of the locality because no work is being proposed. Once again, these are existing conditions to an existing historic single-family home in the HUB1, and the special condition for the lot is that it's occupied by the 2 structures that do not share the same use. One of the biggest hardships with having a lot that shares 2 structures with different uses is insurance rates. Some of the insurance rates could be more aggressive, or it could even be hard to try to obtain sorts of insurance for different uses on a different lot. So we're just trying to propose a subdivision so our property owner could keep enjoying his existing home and the existing building at the existing lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here in support of the applicant for BZA docket 012-25?
Yes, good morning, Board. Zach Smith, 1000 South Norman C. Francis. I just wanted to clarify one point that was made on there. Truly, it's just about, when you talk about the insurance especially, it's the hardship is in obtaining. There's a lot of folks that have lost policies, have been kicked out, and the ability to even attempt to get insurance for a property that has weird situations on it. Specifically, it's one of the underlying reasons why this subdivision is sought. Because again, just as a reminder, there are no changes, there's no additional paving, there's no additional structures, everything is as is. We're talking about trying to split up a lot that is currently a mixed-use zoning, but does have this weird peculiarity where in fact you have a single-family home on one portion that really even speaks and looks at the more residentially zoned spots on Eleanor, and then you have a mixed-use commercial space that effectively fronts on Magazine Street. Those are the reasons why there is in fact a hardship here. Those are the reasons why comparing it to the rest of the neighborhood can be a little off, because again, people generally don't have mixed-use developments with single-family developments on the same lot, and it is creating issues unrelated that we kind of mentioned before. So thank you so much for your support.
Thank you. Anyone else here in support of the applicant? Anyone here in opposition? Any questions from the board?
Yeah, I got one. Can we speak to the history of this property and previous applications? Because I remember this one from a while back, and I can't remember exactly what we did, but I know we had this come before us before, this site.
In 2019, we'll bring the property owner up to give you a more thorough history. But if there's any specific questions, just to kind of get Mr. Nicholas, the owner, going for you.
I just don't remember what the.
Hello, name's Edward Nicholas. I'm the owner of both these properties, of course. Purchased about 6-7 years ago, and you're probably referring back to where I built the 5808 magazine structure brand new, did not need a waiver or a variance. And one of the neighbors filed a lawsuit against the city to try to stop me from building it. It's because actually what the whole reason was, I had originally put in a re-subdivision request when I put my permits in for new construction. This was during COVID, right before COVID. And then when the city came back and says, you don't need a re-subdivision to build this because you can put 2 properties on 1 parcel of land, I'm like, oh, great, I'll just do that because it'll save me 6 months, because I know it. So when I did that, everything went fine, no waivers, no variances, built it, no problem. The neighbor turned around and sued the city, tried to stop me, and the vote was in my favor. After many of Zoom calls through COVID, 6-0 in my favor, and I continued and we did it, no problem. He tried to say that I tried to submit, that y'all shouldn't have approved it because I tried to re-subdivide it and I stopped, and y'all shouldn't have done that or whatever, I don't know. But anyway, so as far as the driveways, I did a small non-structural renovation on the single family 6 years ago, fully permitted. Both driveways, the Magazine driveway and the Eleanor driveway, was fully permitted and approved. Well, I'm kind of confused that the staff put these extra variances on there at the last minute. I kind of baffled me. So I don't know why. Maybe because if you re-subdivide it, but even the Eleanor, that should be all. I'm 20 foot, had to build it. That's why it's kind of like a little curve. Had to go 20 foot from the curb, and we did all that, and everybody all got approved by the curb cuts and all that. So that kind of baffled me. But I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any more. Thank you.
Yeah, so to clarify, it came before us for a subdivision, and then we didn't act on it. I can't remember. I remember.
Sounds like it's a decision appeal.
The decision.
I actually pulled the application for
That's
the
what it was.
re-subdivision.
Yeah, that's what it was.
I
Okay.
pulled it because I didn't need it, because the
Yeah.
city said, oh, you don't need it. If you want to just
That's
go ahead
what
and
it-
build
that's
with
what it
no
was, yeah.
variances, go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I think
So I
that-
chose to do that to save me time.
Yeah. So I just want to remember, because I saw it was in a letter in here somewhere, and I remember it
Sure.
came before us. So I just wanted to make sure that we didn't actually take any action on it.
In light of that also, of course, the 5808 magazine was built in compliant with commercial, that's why the the right and
Yeah.
the front on actually the property line directly.
So you were able to do that by right, which is what I remember
Correct.
what we discussed, is that you didn't have to subdivide it to build that because
Correct.
of the zoning.
Correct.
But, just to clarify then, the parking concern of the back and I guess I'm still just not really sure.
Well, I
100%.
Yeah, it looks to me like what's happening is when you had a mixed-use lot, your corner side yard was max 3 feet. And when you're re-subdividing this, the staff can correct us if I'm wrong, but I'm just telling you the way that I see that they've read this, is you are then making 2 parcels or 2 lots, sorry. One of them will be mixed use, including commercial. The other one will be residential, and now it's a quirk of the zoning code, but now your corner side yard becomes more or less the average of whatever exists
see.
between the 2 properties, so that residential is treated differently than non-residential. So at least according to the survey you handed it us, it's like 10 foot, 7.5, 7.6. no, 7 3/4, sorry. But it's basically 10.5 feet. So if the lot next to it's then at the property line, you go from like a 3-foot yard to a 5-foot something yard. And I think that's, staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's why this need for the variance at the corner side yard has happened.
That was me, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, the corner side yard requirement for non-residential and mixed uses is between 0 and 5 feet, so 5 feet max.
It's all coming back to me.
And then,
I remember that discussion.
Emily, or someone from staff, can you clarify, what's the variance for the Magazine Street parking based on? The thing that would be in the rear yard?
Could you clarify your question?
Probably not.
It looks like this is all just for the side yard.
It's just for the side yard?
The corner side yard.
Well, I'm getting parking pad in between the front
Yeah.
facade and the front parking lot, and I'm not following that in the front property line.
It's the one that's parallel, the parking stall that's parallel to the residence.
Yeah, it's the one that kind of curves.
Oh, that
Yes.
That needs a variance for front yard and corner yard?
Correct.
Oh, okay. So that's what I'm not following. Because why is there now parking in the front yard?
So this would be the parking in front of the blue structure?
Hold up.
Because that's the one that kind of curves.
Trying to look at it.
I believe it would have been permitted before because there's no parking allowed between the corner side yard, like facade, and the corner lot line, but the Magazine structure looks like it goes all the way to the front, or I guess technically the corner side lot line that they share. So technically, the parking space is not in the corner side yard, though it is in the front yard, so.
And this is for the residents, right?
Yes.
What's confusing, not that this already isn't confusing, I got that permitted and approved before the 3-story 5808 Magazine was even thought about being built. So that wasn't even there when it got approved. That you know what I'm saying? She's saying the 5808 is forward and allowed it, but now that we're gonna change it over, so, but all that was legally permitted before we even built 5808 Magazine.
Understood.
Well, I'm looking at this. So I'm trying to understand from what's in the staff report. There's this sketch on figure 10. Y'all are showing this modified parking pad. Is it required of 1 or 2 stalls? Looking at figure 10 in the staff report.
Let me just navigate to that.
It's not requiring 2 stalls. It's showing that the parking pad at the back of lot A1 is going to be deficient, and the red in the front is actually modified parking. So if they were to modify to the red markings, it would be compliant.
Got it.
And when you say modifying it, because I'm just looking at how the parking is configured because it curves, so you're kind of shifting. You're saying that it should shift?
Or why not be able to extend what will be the 2 wheel strips?
Yes, it's really essentially just extending the wheel strips.
Okay.
I couldn't get
The graphic to work, okay.
Yes.
So, and that's maybe more where the question is, so is it, now I understand. From the edge of the wheel strips coming forward towards the front.
We just
towards
need
the
a full car length in that.
Inside that run.
Inside of that run.
When is it measuring it from the front?
Because it
facade or
should be
the
from the front porch. It should be from the front porch because there's a balcony condition above it, so that
Right.
tells me that's the front edge of the building. So it should come from that point forward.
Okay, so that's kind of minor. And then the issue, the way you're seeing it in the rear of the property is just that it's over the property line, it's not wide enough? Is that essentially it?
Yes.
Okay.
Anywhere inside of here.
And that's technically parking in the, although if it's 18 foot of depth and the minimum, the minimum corner side yard ends up being something like 5 feet, you're pretty close to the, like if a car were able to pull all the way through from Magazine Street, that would be pretty close to not having the back of the car in the corner side yard.
Pretty close.
You're
You're saying pretty close to.
too compliant. Like, in other words, if I need, now I'm talking about the Magazine Street space. So in other words, just what we're doing for everybody's information is trying to make sure we understand the variance request. So for the one coming off Eleanor Street, it looks like the wheel strips need to be a little bit longer. That would make them compliant because the full car width would fit behind the front building. The other one, a parking space depth would be 18 feet. And you're marking up in there that we've got 24 foot 3 3/4 from the corner side yard. So I guess my question is, what is the required actual, what would the new corner side yard depth need to be? I was sort of going through it earlier and kind of came to the average of 10 and a half feet and 0 feet, and sort of said that the corner side yard required would be maybe 5 1/4 foot. And if I add 5 to 18, I'm a little bit less than what you're marking up on the plan. So it looks like if the car was able to pull all the way through to where you've marked it on that markup, the car would be out of the corner side yard. Or it's also in the rear yard, I guess. Maybe it's in the rear yard. So it's not even an issue, I don't think. Yeah.
Are you intending to park from Magazine? Because basically you need just one space, right? And the one from Eleanor works just by extending it. So are you intended to utilize the existing space that is left over from the subdivision in between that point and the building to park a car?
Yes, in talking with neighbors about how important parking is and that'll be a larger discussion for a different day. We were totally on board with allowing for this parking, knowing that it would add wrinkles to this waiver, but, the fundamental issue here was not to remove any required parking or parking that's available for the commercial space next door. So in a perfect world, this parking space that is giving this project a lot more friction than we would hope is really to satisfy the commercial activity, continue to allow some off-street parking, and fulfill a promise we made to the neighbors to not remove and not change the actual physical layout of this space any way, shape, or form. So,
But you're still then going to be parking on a residential lot to serve the commercial space?
yes, with an easement, and that's why some of that's there. In a perfect world, we would have pushed this line even further to be
Correct.
completely off the line.
Correct.
But due to this going through the J. Duforce and then having to have retroactive closing off windows and sprinkler systems, it's where we kept it to make the appropriate 3 foot. So that was one of the hardships why we couldn't push this line further back.
And the issue there is just that you put this invisible line in, you got less than 9 feet or whatever it is you need for the driveway.
Correct, for a space that has been there, was
Yeah.
permitted when it got built, and will continue to be used, and has any sort of provisos necessary for this, any sort of cross easements, cross access, the owner will continue in the long-term plan to own both of these, and will memorialize that if required, and we were expecting to memorialize it.
There's a servitude on the survey, and that's about access.
Correct.
Okay. All right. All right, I think I got that one. There was,
sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Any other questions? Y'all are good, I'm good.
Yeah,
Is there a motion?
sure.
Don't I'll jump at once.
Yeah, I got it. Do we need more discussion? I don't, okay.
I'll mess it up.
Well, I want to
Almost
touch.
at the finish line.
Before I make it, because we talked a lot about parking, we did not talk about the waiver of the permeable open space. And the way I'm seeing that is basically the building is there, it is what it is. It's not, it's, as the staff noted, it's not the only location in the neighborhood that doesn't comply. Okay, all right. So with that said, Madam Chair, regarding docket BZA 012-25, I'm going to make motions to approve the variances, and I'll read those out in a minute. Finding that the requests for the variances meet all 9 of the 9 criteria of the standards for variance of Article 4, Section 4.6.f of the CZO, subject to the provisos that were noted in the report. I believe there was one. Yep, subject to one proviso. So I will be moving to approve the requested waivers for proposed Lot A1 of Article 12, Section 12.3.8.1, Table 12-2, Article 22, Section 22.8.8.1, point B, point 2 for parking pad design location, Article 22, Section 22.8.8.1, point B, point 3 permitted vehicle parking locations in the corner side yard, Article 22, Section 22.8.b.1, the dimensions of the vehicle parking space depth. Article 22, Section 22.11.d.1, parking pad design location. Article 22, Section 22.11.d.1, parking pad design location for the 22.11.d.1, pardon me, for corner side yard parking. Article 22, Section 22.11.d.2 for parking pad design location between the front facade and the front lot line, and Article 22, Section 22.11.d.4 for parking pad design dimensions.
Second.
Additionally, the requested waiver of Article 12, Section 12.3.8.1, Table 12-2 for the permeable openings or open space.
Well done. Second.
With the proviso as well as
With
finding
the-
that the 9 criteria
Yeah,
have been met?
finding that the 9 criteria have been met.
Thank you. With regards to BZA docket 012-25, it's been moved by Commissioner Richards, second by Commissioner Diaz to grant the requested waivers as indicated, finding that the 9 criteria have been met and adopting commentary from today, as well as the applicant's submission for establishment that the 9 criteria have been met, subject to one proviso. Roll call vote, Ty James.
Yes.
Jose Alvarez. Ramiro Diaz.
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez.
Yay.
Jason Richards.
Yes.
And Candace Forrest, yes. 6 yeas, no nays, the motion carries.
Thank you. Hi, ladies.
Bye. Item 11, docket number BZA 013-25 for the property at 82228 through 8230 Nelson Street was withdrawn. We will now begin with new business for safety and permit decision appeals. Will the chair please read the hearing rules for decision appeals?
Rules and procedures for public hearings, appeals of the decisions of the Director of the Department of Safety and Permits. Following procedures shall be observed during the appeal hearing. Each speaker shall give their name and address prior to speaking on the proposal. The representative of the Department of Safety and Permits shall present to the board the decision which is under appeal, the relevant code sections relating to the appeal, and any information explaining the department's decision. The applicant or representative will speak next. The presentation shall be limited to a maximum of 5 minutes for each applicant or representative speaker. But in no event shall the cumulative presentation total by applicants or their representatives exceed 15 minutes. Proponents or persons in favor of the proposal will speak next and be allowed 3 minutes per speaker. Opponents or persons in opposition of the proposal will speak next and be allowed 3 minutes per speaker. The applicant or representative will be allowed a rebuttal. The rebuttal shall be limited to a cumulative maximum of 5 minutes. For an exceptional case, the time limitations may be extended by the presiding officer with the approval of the board. As the board deems necessary, the case may be acted on at this meeting or deferred for additional information or review. If the case is deferred, it will be acted on at a subsequent meeting as provided by law. All proper parliamentary procedures shall be followed, including recognition of speakers, relevance of argument, and absolute prohibition of applause or demonstration. Standard of review. The Board of Zoning Adjustments has the power to hear and decide appeals where it is alleged there is an error in any order, requirement, decision, or determination made by an administrative officer in the enforcement of the comprehensive zoning ordinance. The board also has the power to hear and determine appeals from applicants who have been refused a building permit because of a violation or conflict with the zoning ordinance or the official map of the city. The applicant's appeal to the Board of Zoning Adjustments is governed by Section 5-408 of the City of New Orleans Home Rule Charter. Well, normally staff calls the item.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have a new mic. Item 12, docket number BZA 014-25.
Good morning, Board. Dan McNamara, Chief Zoning Official for the City of New Orleans, here on 717 Barrack Street, BZA 014-25, regarding the Director's continued interpretation regarding customary lodging services. The City of New Orleans has consistently interpreted customary lodging services to require personnel staffing at all times. This was initially clarified in the Zoning Interpretation Memo Z-18-02, authored by my good friend, Mr. Zach Smith, which stated in pertinent part that for the purposes of use with the comprehensive zoning ordinance, the term customary lodging services shall mean those places that, at a minimum, provide an interior lobby or space supervised by a person in charge at all hours. Such an interpretation remains. The applicant posits that the codification of the customary lodging services in the comprehensive zoning ordinances dispenses with the requirement that a hotel or motel be staffed at all times. In short, that conclusion is erroneous. The CZO defines customary lodging services as guest services provided by lodging facilities, including hotels and motels. Customary services include, at a minimum one, a dedicated lobby space to adequately enable check-in or check-out procedures, and personnel staffing to assist guests at check-in and check-out. This city's previous guidance set forth in the zoning interpretation is in no way undermined by the codification of customary lodging services. Under the CZO, personnel and staffing must be present to assist guests, and there must be a lobby. What applicants fail to consider is that a basic tenet of statutory interpretation is the concept known as the presumption of the non-exclusive include. So what we're talking about here is that's when the verb phrase include is in a piece of law or legislation, introduces examples, and that those examples are not exhaustive to the piece of legislation. And that's exactly what we have here. The CZO specifically states that the services delineated are at a minimum. To suggest that the presence of personnel or staffing is not required at all time appends what customary lodging services are and at what it means to be a hotel. Laws are not to be interpreted in such a manner as to reach absurd conclusions, and to interpret the CZO in the manner suggested by the applicant would do just that. What is clear is that the CZO is still subject to interpretation, and the director's decision to apply the law as it has done for 7 years is correct. As such, the director's decision must be upheld. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Board. Zach Smith, 1000 South Norman C. Francis. Before I get rolling on time, I do have 3 cards seating to me. I just wanted to be good on that. I will be asking to refer to something in the file if it's possible.
That'll be a total of 12 minutes.
12 minutes. It will be much, much quicker than that. All right. Again, thanks again, Zach Smith, 1000 South Norman C. Francis. Since today, the staff rebuttal certainly goes to great length to rely on the memo from the 2018, I'd ask to see if it could be put up on the screens, and if I could even cede 30 seconds of my 12 minutes to make sure that everybody can read the first paragraph. The first paragraph of that memo, very important. It'll come back to us often. Okay. To be clear, this appeal is not asking anyone to not provide for a lobby, nor are we asking for anyone to not require the human element to assist with check-in, check-out procedures. That is the codified definition as it exists in the CZO, and in no way, shape, or form are we trying to talk about, appeal those two requirements, which are specifically listed under the definition of customary lodging services in the CZO. This appeal is essentially about the unwritten rule based on a 2018 memo about 24/7 staffing, which is not in the ordinance, which is not in the law, was in fact, and we'll discuss all that in a second. Article 4.10 allowed for this memo to be written. We say that in the first paragraph. Why? Because in 2018, the terms customary lodging services did not have an entry in the CZO Article 26 and were only referenced as a term under the definition of hotel. After receiving a request, which is required under 4.10 to create an interpretation, we reviewed and came up with this memo that consistently for the last 7 years has been used when anyone's applying for hotels. Let me be clear, had there been an entry in Article 26 for customer lodging services, we'd have never attempted to provide this interpretation because we would have lacked any statutory authority to do so. The Director of Safety and Permits cannot overrule the City Council. We can go down the charter, but everybody on this board knows that. Using the memo today is wrong. In 2019 and into 2020, a series of text amendments were considered that ultimately added a specific definition to clarify this term, customary lodging services, in the CZO. Per the written argument in defense of this continued action, the author notes that the previous 2018 memo is in no way undermined by the codification of these terms. If that is how we're going to roll, then I guess the City Council should stop adopting any new ordinances and we should just allow safety and permits to essentially create whatever words and definitions they so choose. There is a reference in the staff rebuttal to absurd outcomes. What would be absurd is if the department went through the steps required to provide a legally required interpretation of these terms. Firstly, the exercise would be short-lived since folks would ask, why are you going to essentially redefine what is already defined? Secondly, it would be awkward when such a cleanly defined term had words added to it. As a reference to the law as written, customary lodging services, guest services provided by lodging facilities, including hotels and motels. Customary services include, at a minimum, dedicated lobby space to adequately enable check-in, check-out procedures, and personnel staffing to assist guests at check-in, check-out. I said it before, I'm saying it now, I'll say it again. In no way, shape, or form are we trying to deprive any hotel use of the required lobby, and we are not trying to remove the human element of assisting at check-in, check-out. But keep in mind, there was nothing about hours of operation, staffing, et cetera, outside of those very specific mentions. CPC actions. We mentioned earlier that in 2019, this process started to amend the 2018 memo in pieces about the 2018 memo as part of a larger review of hotels, short-term rentals, et cetera. A couple of key points. Per the oral history from CPC staffers present during this process, in written notes from zoning docket 026-19, which I generally have the appropriate parts of that clip, staffing requirements were specifically considered and were intentionally left out of the final text. Legislative intent is important, but something not to solely rely on. However, in the context of the myriad of other black and white things that you're looking at now, This is just another feather on the failed argument for the city to continue to use a 2018 memo to somehow overrule the specific actions of the City Council of New Orleans that happened after July 31st, 2018. When we talk about the time of operation, the CZO references several uses that have time and staffing: adult daycare operations, reception facilities. We already discussed how the council intentionally did not put these constraints in here for customary lodging services, but also we wanted to make sure that you guys had references to other parts in Article 26 where hours of operation and staffing and such are specifically contemplated and specifically required. Again, had the council intended it or had the council wanted it, they needed to put it and they should have put it. Customary lodging services were defined in 2018. To note, the department has done this for a period of time, might be rational sounding, but remember that until July 31st, 2018, the term customary lodging services was never defined. In fact, not long after the 2018 memo, the council jumped into action and did something. The council upended and superseded this interpretation. If the department feels so strongly about this, they could have or should have created a new memo that specifically looked at the new definition and posited their own review. Again, I go back to the memo that I asked you guys to read at the beginning that everybody keeps relying on. This is from July 31st, 2018, slightly younger director at the time. As a comprehensive zoning ordinance does not provide a definition for the terms customary lodging services within the definition for hotel motel in chapter 26, the ordinance dictates that these terms shall be interpreted in accordance with the definitions considered blah, 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 26.2f. As there is no normal dictionary usage, and we go through there because 410 allows us. We're using a memo, guys, today that specifically says, as there wasn't a definition provided, we took the authority to interpolate because the law does allow for that. There is no way that this memo can be legally written today or used today when specific action of the council has made it essentially null. It has superseded it. Any argument contrary to that is just taking the charter and tearing it up. To be clear, again, I made a point to say that we're going to do this. This appeal is not asking for anyone to not provide a lobby, nor is this in any way, shape, or form trying to remove the human element of the check-in, check-out process, which is specifically codified in the CZO. This body regularly tells folks that for policy issues, the council has to be the decider. Funny thing here, the council did decide. Their words are clear. Their timing was most proximate to today. Their authority is greater. If the department wants to change policy, they need to get the council to update the CZO. Illegally using stale actions to backdoor policy changes via the administration is wrong on every count in this case. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else here in support of the applicant? Anyone here in opposition? You could come up, please. You can come up.
Well, Aaron's here in opposition.
So we have one in opposition and then information.
Good morning or afternoon, board. My name is Erin Holmes. I'm here representing View Carre property owners, residents, and associates, and we're here to speak in opposition to this appeal. We agree with the conclusions of the appeal summary report that customary lodging services include staff present at all times. In your packet, you have received 8 letters of opposition from nearby neighbors who are all against removing the requirement to have staff present 24 hours a day at this location. This applicant's consultant argues that the requirement is outdated and does not align with contemporary hospitality practices. But these neighbors correctly argue that this establishment is not a contemporary hospitality lodging service. In fact, hotels have been prohibited within this district for over 50 years, and it operates as a legal nonconformity. Given this hotel's location, excuse me, which is 100% surrounded by residential uses and its historical duration, the requirement is appropriately applied to mitigate any adverse impacts on the surrounding properties. Further, sorry, computer is frozen. I love that. I have somebody ceding time to me as well, so if I run out, this is why you have things printed. Okay, so short-term rentals are not allowed in this zoning district, and I'm not arguing that this business is a short-term rental. But if the city were to allow it to operate without the necessary supervision on site, it could essentially become a de facto short-term rental. An on-site staff person is necessary to address sound disruptions, unsafe security operations, and the potential risk of fire, which is what the neighbors are concerned about. Further, as this hotel operates as a legal nonconformity, removing the requirement for staff at all hours would decrease public safety supervision, thus increasing its intensity, which is prohibited for legal nonconforming uses. Granting this appeal would also set a very dangerous precedent for hotel and lodging accommodations citywide. So we hope you will agree with the staff findings and oppose this appeal today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Graham Williams, 1029 Barrack Street. I put in an information card because I'm neither particularly in favor or against this specific project, but I do have an interest, or my clients have an interest, in the interpretation of the CZO. Specifically, there is no requirement that there is a 24/7 attendant in the definition. I would refer the commissioners to the definition of group home, which defines a group care facility in a residential dwelling licensed by the state for 24-hour medical or non-medical care. So I would assume that if the city council wanted to say 24-hour, they would have in the definition of customary lodging services. And finally, I would direct the commissioners to section 3-101 of the municipal code, which says all legislative powers of the city shall be vested in the council and exercised by it in the manner and subject to the limitations hereafter set forth. Thank you.
So are we doing round two here? What are we doing?
The applicant has an opportunity to rebut.
That was, I'm sorry. Okay.
Good afternoon again, Zach Smith. This is just one particular point after my missive earlier. Just as a point of clarity, we regularly do non-conforming use applications for folks, and that if a hotel is proven to be in operation prior to this memo, the city, of course, allows for those properties to essentially not apply to this memo, which would, of course, include no staffing obligations, and of course that the current CZO, because it would defer to the definitions at the time. In this particular case, again, looking at the definitions at the time, there's just no way to get us from what the council has specifically done. Again, I know it's out of order to pass it up there, but if anybody needs screenshots from the ZD from 2019, I'm happy to pass around a paper for it, but they exist. Not the memo, I'm talking about where the staff and CPC and council staff specifically went over whether to include 24/7 and any sort of references to that. And the decision was made to cut it out. So for those reasons, again, I've yet to see anything in writing, I've yet to hear anything in writing that somehow gets us to where the department can use an outdated memo to somehow supersede the current city council. Thank you.
And I'd like to thank my good friend for his words, but one thing that he did, I'm sorry, is it my turn? I'm sorry, Mr. James, procedurally, I apologize.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, anybody want further clarity from the department? Just trying to make sure we do follow the procedure on this piece.
Yeah, I'd ask the department if they've got a rebuttal.
Thank you.
I absolutely do, and thank you for the question. Again, one thing that to the points that were brought up by my good friend, Mr. Smith, that the CZO does vest with the chief zoning official the authority and the power to interpret the CZO. That hasn't changed. The introduction of this ordinance did not change, and because the flexibility that must necessarily be built into the CZO, that's why that interpretive power exists. And again, what we're talking about here is an interpretation. And what we ultimately mean by customary lodging services and what is required in those customary lodging services and what is required to perform those very things that are listed in the definition. So again, you cannot interpret in such a way as to lead to absurd conclusions. Is it logical to assume that, for example, how are these services supposed to be provided if someone is not there? How are these services are to be provided, for example, if they're be done telephonically or through the internet, if there's a power outage, if there is an internet, it goes down? something happens where a guest needs to have some type of minimum services provided, and there's no one there to provide them. So the position of the applicant certainly is talking about changes and new realities when it comes to technology and things like that. But however, he's asking, the person who's asking for the board to make a decision regarding policy changes is the applicant, and not what the standard definition of customary lodging services are and what the common understanding of those are. And again, you know, I know my good friend's pasta-related deity was brought up at the last BZA meeting, but, you know, I kind of think of what was written in the good book of Matthew, that we are not supposed to be reeds shaken by the wind. And that's why, you know, we have to keep coming back to the fact of what we mean, what is there, and how are those customary lodging services to be provided if there is no one there. And when the STR content came up, is what are we going to do? What are we turning our city into? Are these customary lodging services provided by hotels or motels, or is there something else that is going to expand and expand out of control? And the very simple fact is that we are talking about hotels and motels and the services that they provide, and what is the customary services that those businesses provide. As suggested by Mr. Smith, that is something wholly other than what is, in fact, customary. Thank you.
All right, any further questions from the board? I do have one just from a procedural standpoint when we get into interpretations and basically on a precedent when a document is actually issued. If I do come back to the frame of reference of what's within the 2018 document, it does establish that the initial interpretation was solely based in the fact that a definition did not exist. Would you concur with that from the department end?
It's certainly written in the menu. I mean, excuse me.
So no,
the
I'm
memo.
asking one very simple question.
Yeah.
In the intent of why the document was generated, it was generated because a definition did not exist. You concur?
I would not concur with that necessarily. I think the reason that the memo was issued because the underlying question must have come up as to why, what customary lodging services were. That's why
at
the
that
memo
time, which was not captured in the CZO.
That's
as a
correct. And
defined
so there's
term.
an interpretation that needed to occur
At that time. All right, so no different than, let's say, with IZDs that get applied through town. IZDs are put into place over a short-term duration while legislation cures that mechanism. How would that not still apply in this, from this standpoint, when the memo is issued because a definition is not provided? Then a text amendment is addressed. That text amendment then further clarifies that definition, goes through the debate, through the public forum to confirm how it should function, and then from that point forward, the new definition is what supersedes what may have happened in the past.
I would agree with you, and so we're in complete agreement up to this point. So,
all right. So, if at that time the definition has been established at that point, should it not be the department's position to then go back and to put further clarification based on the new definition, especially since a definition was not stated beforehand?
And that's exactly what has been done. That is my position. That is exactly what has been done. What is in the fact that those words are not there does not change what the minimum requirements are, because again, it is not just those two things. And
But it's also the date of.
Excuse me.
No, actually, I have the floor. So
I'm
again,
sorry, I was
trying to
answering the question.
Yeah, but it's also kind of like not necessarily addressing how this is framed, because again, my initial point was based on the date of the issuance of the memo. It's at that point in time, and as I stated earlier, once a new definition has been established, that's what supersedes. Now, then, is it not the department's requirement to then provide a new memo based on the new definition? Because I'm concerned about the date of the document is what's really causing me more confusion as opposed to what's the intent of how it maybe should have been interpreted.
Well, I can tell you right now, the statement that was provided in response is the statement of the department. And so,
But where's the formal memo?
Whether a formal memo is necessary in response, I would suggest that it's not, because any decision of the Director of Safety and Permits can come before this board, and that's exactly what has happened.
Correct.
So,
And
there's,
so I'm
it is
ta-
not
so I'm in-
mandatory in answer to your question. I think that's more of a question for law, but I think law would agree with me on that.
So may I ask a
I mean,
question?
if that was the case, Mr. James, I'm sorry, we were speaking at the same time, and I'm not trying to interrupt you.
Proceed.
I'm saying if that were the case, then you would need an interpretive memo for any decision of this board, of the Department of Safety and Permits, a formal, and there's only a handful or a dozen or so zoning interpretation memos, but
I think there's a lot more than that that's existed
Well,
since
I mean-
2015. So there's yeah.
a couple of dozen,
Quite a few.
okay? But again, my point being that you would need one of those for every decision that was made by the department, and that's not the case. So when the department speaks, should
But
they
if you're
speak through
referencing an out-of-date document is what I'm more concerned about when the definition has been clarified at a later term.
I would just defer to law on here, whether the decision that was set forth in that memorandum is a decision of the Department of Safety and Permits and a new statement regarding the CZO as it has been amended.
I think there's a little distinction, if I could just step in, when indicating that a memo would be needed for each decision. I don't think that's what the commissioner is saying. I think when there's a situation where the CZO has spoken in one way and the department is, in this scenario, kind of inserting additional language into what the CZO provides for, that's a distinction. You can make a decision on what's existing in the CZO, obviously without the need for an interpretation memo. But when you're stepping outside of the black letter of what's in the CZO, then I think that's where an interpretation memo is necessary.
Well, I would certainly respectfully disagree with you, Ms. Forrest, regarding that. Because when the CZO is amended, it is always subject to interpretation, and that interpretation resides with the chief zoning official.
Correct, in a memo.
And?
In a memo, absolutely. I think when there's an interpretation, that's the exact purpose of the memorandum.
And I would agree, but I would disagree that that's the only method for that. And when the city responded to the applicant, and the applicant deferred to this body, that statement that was made in our response is the statement of the city attorney. I mean, excuse me, the city of New Orleans.
Okay, can I just get a little clarification on timeline? Because the applicant addressed this. So we know 2018, this memo comes up. Those of us who work in the city are quite familiar with it. The way that the definitions work is it's one big article and it's amended, 20 some odd times or something down at the bottom of the list. So does anybody in this room have information about the ordinance and when this was actually changed?
He mentioned it earlier.
Yeah.
It was zoning docket 026-19.
Okay.
19 for the year 2019.
After the memo.
The year after 2018.
Okay, and that was zoning docket, so that went through City Planning Commission.
Yes.
And that went up to City Council.
Yes.
And that was voted and approved.
Yes.
And it was like one of the omnibus sort of change of
Yes.
terms thing? Okay.
Yeah, we believe there were several changes that happened. This was part of an omnibus around lodging in general. And again, I know it's out of order and there's no proof of where it came from, but this is screenshots from clips that we received from the City Planning Commission staff where they're, again, specifically talking about time and whatnot. And again, the absurd conclusion here would be based on this interpretative memo, not just using an old one. This definition of school right now doesn't require a principal on staff at all times, but the department seems like it might be able to add one, even though the definition of second primary education is already defined. So, yeah, 2019 under zoning docket 26.
Thank you.
I would only suggest, and just to leave you with this, that there is an absurd conclusion that can occur, and it's how are these services are to be performed if there's no one there to perform them? And I'll leave it with that.
Yeah, and so then, yeah, let me try and formulate the question. This is a zoning interpretation that was made 6 years ago or 7 years ago, overridden by city council, or not overridden, but clarified then by city council 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago. However, though, what's confusing me, and I just would ask the director or anybody, would just be, this is the first time anybody's taken issue with the interpretation, so why now?
With what interpretation? I'm just trying to.
Like, you know, this conflict existed between the CZO and this interpretation for this period of time. And my initial questions around this were basically, are we appealing a 2018 memo or the decision that's specific to your application? Is there something specific to this application that is worth considering?
I would love to kind of answer a couple of those. Number one, we have definitely pushed back on the department by them. If you were to go apply for a hotel today, you would get a response that says, please show compliance and identify compliance with the 2018 memo. So we'll start there. So that this continues to bubble up. We've had a couple of property owners who have actually gone and retrofitted their activities to apply the memo, even though there's been protesting along the lines to say, please explain to me how this is somehow trumped by this, with this being the earlier one by an unelected administrator at the time, and one being done in the future by the actual charter responsibility legislative branch. It's identified somewhere in there in section, I think, Roman numeral 2. So to say that it hasn't come up, it's been coming up. The majority of people in the world, they don't understand how this process works. They don't understand how to quote unquote push back. They don't understand the friction. And on this particular one, 717 is one of a myriad where this is gone. And, you know, something that was put back here, which is a little bit outside your question, but it's, you know, we're worried about technology. Again, we are not debating in any way, shape, or form the need for a human element to assist with check-in, check-out. That is not up for discussion. That is not up for debate. We have no intent for any projects that this might apply to. But 717 happens to be one that was deemed to be within the 45 days because of how many are going. But this overreach and this application of this memo has essentially negatively affected properties for about 5 years all throughout the city. In many cases, people just kind of swallow it and move on. I'm going to chalk that up to COVID. I'm going to chalk that up to a lot of applicants not understanding their ability and their rights. And in this particular case, to be very honest and transparent, we were expecting the city to do a comprehensive review of transient lodging, which was identified like 2 years ago. And due to a whole quagmire of events, which are outside anybody in this room's ability, we've just run out of time. We've run out of time to where the illegal enforcement of this has started to turn from being a headache to a bankrupter. And so we have no choice but to come in here. This was actually supposed to be for last month, and due to a little bit of stuff. But this does have an implication related to that memo because it applies over. But in no way, shape, or form, some of the boogeyman arguments, the what ifs, the technology, whatever, in no way, shape, or form are we trying to even get into the fact that these hotels absolutely have to have lobbies. And I'm here to say it. You won't hear an appeal from me on this. And they absolutely need that human interaction, which was what definitely was intended for that check-in, check-out. And we're not here to talk about that.
If I may respond, I think you're
only the question of at all hours. That was what was the at all hours was what was the challenge.
Exactly. And Ms. Forrest, you know, it was in the memo, and it was specifically not copied when it was superseded by the.
Well, and that was what my follow-up question was going to be, because the language that is included in the CZO includes everything except for that particular term. It includes everything from the memo except for the language at all hours. Yeah. It lists everything else out verbatim, which seems to be, I mean, you can only interpret that as an intentional omission.
Which I would agree with, but I would have one more question for the applicant. Is the director's put this very good question out here, in my opinion, which is, if they're not there all the time, how do they provide the service? You're here appealing this in specific reference to 717 Barrack Street. Can you just, for my benefit, explain to me how you can do that if somebody's not there all the time?
What are we trying to do at all times?
Well, no, I don't know.
And that would be, that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons why I'd say it's generally, what I'm going to say publicly, is a red herring argument. Because that's then saying that hotels have to go somehow and be supermen, well beyond what any use standards require and what any definitions require. And so I understand as a human and want to acknowledge the question that was there, but fundamentally that is well outside what this appeal is for. And again, had the legislators who specifically reviewed this through, as your first opening question 5 minutes ago, it had its ZD, it went through public discussion, it went through city planning staff, it went through the public body of the City Planning Commission, and it went through the council. Everyone determined specifically, to Ms. Forrest's point, we're gonna take what the previous director wrote when he had the authority to do so, and we're going to copy it almost verbatim. We're specifically gonna take out the section about all times. So the hypothetical boogeyman argument about any of all these interpretations, that would be well beyond what the CZO requires. Again, I'll go back to a school. That's like saying that the city, as part of a permit, could say, oh, by the way, we're worried about a very, very bad action from a former student, so how about we start adding in various layers? Those are not required. They never have been, they weren't, and there was specific legislative action that clearly said that the former director probably overstepped by putting that in there. Because again, they interpreted it, they reviewed it, and they came up with their own definition specifically superseding this. Thank you.
I would just ask you to focus on the words "at a minimum" and what is required to provide services. Presence doesn't require Superman. Half the battle is just showing up, and if you don't show up, you can't provide the services. Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
Question to legal, to law. Typically, when new legislation is introduced and prior documentation or memos or for interpretation remain on file, what is the normal course of action for those documents to be redacted, if not at all? Or to be stricken as a document that has applicability?
I would actually have to look into that. I'm not sure for safety and permits for their zoning interpretations.
There are redacted, there are withdrawn memos, some of which have come from decisions from this board, I'm pretty sure.
Right. And that's what I'm trying to just get to. Is this also incident of administratively, once the new legislation was put in place, the redaction of that memo just wasn't addressed at that time?
Yeah.
And I think I understand your question more now, Mr. James, with that clarification with law. But my point would remain the same, and my interpretation remains the same, that the redaction of that document does not mean that that document itself is not can be used, advisory, the logic based upon where that decision came from, it can still be used as a persuasive authority.
But
to
even
do
if
that.
but even if there's record that when that component of the document was discussed, asked, and answered through the legislative process to be removed, how would that still have applicability?
I'm not sure that the fact that that language that was, as you're suggesting, is in fact the case is what occurred. But I'm suggesting that that is still persuasive authority in reaching a determination or an interpretation of what the new legislation is.
I'm going to go on a little bit of a sidebar here because I've spent some time reading back between these two, and they've been characterized by the applicant as identical, but they're not. And I actually want to make the case that the current language is an improvement to what we have currently. So the original definition said, at a minimum, provide an interior lobby or office supervised by a person in charge at all hours. If I'm to like read that strictly, it says a lobby or office supervised by a person in charge at all hours. Where is that person? Inside of that wording, it's not really clear to me that that person has to be here. The city council adopted definition proposed by CPC is slightly different. It says that customary services should include at a minimum a dedicated lobby space to adequately enable check-in and check-out procedures and personnel/staffing to assist guests at check-in and check-out, which to me actually is a little bit that tilt to personnel staffing versus supervised by a person in charge at all hours, to me is actually improving the interpretation because, and you know, this memo is what it is. It's in black and white. It's obviously been enforced to require a person to be there, but like, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm getting wrong the definition of supervised, but it seems to me that the current language is a little bit more clear. And if all this consideration went into it, then I don't see why we should support continuing to enforce a memo that basically was addressed by the city council 5 or 6 years ago.
That's the point of the process and why those memos, I've always appreciated just from my interaction with safety and permits in the past. If there's something that has not been clarified, traditionally you would either get an interpretation or in some cases you would see the council put an IZD in place to put a hard pause while they cured that process. And especially when it's something this explicit, when we get to the definition of this one codified term, then the latest action taken by that body is what is the superseding interpretation. So that's what should be adhered to. And if there needs to be a further clarification, that's why I asked that question. In my opinion, the original memo should have been redacted, and if there needs to be a further clarification beyond that point, that is a new document. So again, I don't know if this, and this is no fault of yours, because if at the end of the day, back in 19, when this was handled, that should have been further clarified. And this, to me, it causes more ambiguity when we're allowed to have flexibility of two definitions versus what has clearly been defined through the legislative process.
Are there any other questions?
The motion's in order.
Yes, proceed.
Madam Chair, regards to BZA docket number 014-25, my motion is to overturn a decision of the Director of Safety and Permits, on finding that their interpretation was done in error, and taking the comments that we've provided here from the dais, that the legislative definition as it stands in the CZO is the overarching defined term for this reference of customary lodging services.
I'd second that.
Thank you. With regards to decision appeal docket BZA 014-25, it's been moved by Commissioner James, second by Commissioner Richards, to overturn the decision of the Director of the Department of Safety and Permits, finding that there was an error in that decision. Roll call vote. Todd James.
Yes.
Jose Alvarez.
Yes.
Ramiro Diaz,
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez,
Yay.
Jason Richards,
Yes.
and Candace Forrest, yes. 6 yeas, no nays, the motion carries.
Would the board consider a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner James, second by Commissioner Gonzalez, to adjourn the meeting. Roll call vote, Todd James,
Yes.
Jose Alvarez.
Yes.
Ramiro Diaz,
Yes.
Alfonso Gonzalez,
Yay.
Jason Richards.
Yes.
Candace Forrest, yes. 6 yeas, no nays. Motion carries, and our meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.